Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel's Mutant Necromancer. Chapter 61. Pep walked in the corridors of Stark Tower with her bag in her arms, staring vigilantly at every passing employee. There were also beads of sweat on her forehead, and her breathing was even a little disturbed. "Miss Pep," a female voice sounded behind her. "Calm down, you are too attractive. Go, there is a toilet in front, let's go in and have a rest first." "Okay." Pep immediately accepted the voice's idea and walked quickly into the toilet. Walking into the toilet and locking the door, Pep gasped and fanned the wind with his hands and complained to the woman in front of him, "Morena, you know, I've never done such a thing before. Tony, you're going to be scared as soon as you come back. You know you're going to make trouble for me." In front of Pep was the female Roger Morena. She put her hair up and put on a professional attire, but she really looked like a heroic female white-collar worker. Seeing Pep like this, she smiled and persuaded, "Take a deep breath, don't be nervous, think about it, why are you afraid? This company belongs to Tony, so what if you help him copy the data? Isn't this the job of an assistant? It's true to say that, but there are ghosts in this company, the kind of guy who will cooperate with terrorists to kill people, and judging from his ability to know Tony's whereabouts, his status must not be low. Who knows if he still has. As for my subordinates, I'm just an ordinary person, and I'm not as strong as you." Pep smiled wryly. She was just an ordinary person, how could she complete the work of a spy without changing her face? "Don't worry, Miss Pep." Morena smiled and held Pep's shoulder. "With me here, nothing will happen to you." "Thank you, Morena." The warm palm brought back a little courage to Pep, and then she cheered herself up in her own way. "Tony, I must buy myself the biggest gift when I go back, use his money." Pep, who had returned to normal, took Morena to the general manager's office on the top floor. It was already past the off-duty time, and there was no one there. They saw no one around, so they opened the door and walked in. However, everything was under surveillance. The camera captured it. One thing Pep did not miscalculate is that Opedry really still has subordinates. At this moment, the security captain in the monitoring room picked up the mobile phone and dialed Opedry's number. "Boss, someone has entered your office. It's Miss Pep and another woman." At this moment, Obadiah was standing in front of a huge steel mecha. The big guy in front of him brought him infinite courage, so he smiled and said to the phone, "Take a team to catch they, bring them to the 16th district, and if they encounter resistance, they will be killed, and they will say that Pep intends to steal commercial secrets." After hanging up the phone, he dialed another number. "Hey, Tony has already suspected me, it's time for you to act, don't have any accidents this time." Hanging up the phone again, Obadiah looked at the mecha in front of him and laughed. Tony, you are a genius just like your father. Even though you shut down Stark Industries' weapon research and development organization, you developed it yourself, the core of an epic-making weapon. Unfortunately, you and I are not in the same way, so you can only die." Accompanied by his words, he installed a somewhat worn-out bulb-shaped device on the chest of the mecha, and a blue light shone on his face, making the shadow behind his face even darker. "Oh, my God, what is Obadiah's research? The 16th district, why didn't I know there was this research room?" Pep browsed the latest hidden folder on the computer, and the drawings in it made her feel overwhelmed. Shocked, the huge mecha and supporting weapon system must be used for military purposes, but Tony has already announced the closure of the research and development unit. It seems that Obadiah really has a problem. Soon, she found the key thing. The Jericho missile, shipped to Afghanistan, is indeed Obadiah. This is the most powerful tactical weapon currently developed by the Stark Group. Even the US military has only expressed its intention to buy it, but Obadiah secretly sent 10 of them to Afghanistan, which is enough to explain everything. "I'm going to call Tony immediately." Pep picked up the phone while copying the documents, but at this moment, Morena pressed her shoulder and pushed her to the side of the cabinet. "By the way, turned off the lights. Squat here and don't move, someone is coming." Bang! The outermost locked door was kicked open, and a team of security personnel entered the lounge outside the office with automatic rifles. Morena calmly summoned a bone bow, and aimed 2 bone arrows at the office. The door. "Miss Pep, we suspect that you are suspected of stealing company secrets. Please put down your weapons and stay still on the ground. We will not hurt you." Response is sent out. Shrugging helplessly, the security captain shook his head and rushed to the door. One of his subordinates immediately came to the door and kicked it up. As the last door was kicked open, the security personnel on both sides of the door immediately rushed with their guns according to tactical movements, went in. Before they could see the whole picture of the office clearly, 2 bone arrows flew out from the darkness and accurately shot into the chest. Enemy attack. Open fire. Seeing the 2 twitching men on the ground, the security captain immediately shouted, and pushed the muzzle of the gun into the door to shoot. They are just security personnel, and of course they will not prepare such equipment as night vision goggles. Therefore, turning off the lights greatly affected their numerical advantage. This kind of shooting couldn't scare Morena. She calmly shot another arrow, piercing through the wall of the office and piercing the captain's arms together. There are only 2 of them, rush in and kill them. The captain's rifle fell to the ground, and the experienced man immediately rolled on the ground to avoid the wall, and at the same time ordered his subordinates to use the superior number to kill the people inside. Woman, anyway, according to Opidry's order, it doesn't matter whether she lives or dies. Long Island, New York, Stark Villa. When Tony was leading Kane and drinking wine in the sea breeze, Tony's phone rang, and after the connection, the gunshots filled the sky accompanied by the screaming of little Pepper. Tony, help, the insider is Opidry, my God, he sent out the army to kill us. Kane had already known the situation at the scene through telepathy. In fact, with Morena present, the situation was not that dangerous. So far, all the dead were security personnel, and Morena even started to use bursting arrows to break open the wall and kill the others. But Tony didn't know this. As soon as he heard that Pepper was in danger, he immediately ran downstairs with a pale face. There was where he repaired his steel suit. At Stark Tower, they're just in time to rush over now. However, he had just followed Tony for 2 steps, and his heart was full of warning signs. The bone armor immediately covered his body, and at the same time, he released blood and ran in front of Tony. Click, click. 2 ice thorns hit Kane's chest fiercely and broke into 2 pieces, but the impact force also made Kane, who was not on his feet firmly, take a small step back. 2 masked men came out of the darkness, and one of them was holding 2 ice spikes in his hand. It seemed that the 2 shots just now were his masterpiece. Seeing the abnormality on Kane, the 2 big men were stunned for a moment, but they continued to attack. The big man with ice thorns continued to throw out ice thorns to attack Kane, while the other empty-handed big man waved his palm, and a steel man beside him suddenly, a row of steel nails flew out of the sculpture and flew towards Tony. Hell, these 2 are professional killers, and they cooperate so well that Kane has no time to fight back, so he can only be forced to return to Tony to help him block all attacks. Tony, leave me alone, hurry down. Kane said loudly. With Tony here to attract firepower, he couldn't show his real skills at all. Priests of Rothma don't have so many defensive spells, even control ones. Not many. Taking human life in an instant is what they are best at. I think too. How do I go down? Tony answered loudly while covering his head to avoid stray bullets. Now he was forced to be at the railing upstairs. Although it was only a few steps away from the stairs, he knew that even if he thought about it with his butt, the 2 masked men would definitely not give him this chance. After a short fight, Kane has already seen that one of the 2 big men has the ability to condense water into ice, and the other can manipulate metal. So far, they have not shown other abilities, but based on these 2 that's enough trouble. For the sake of coquettishness, this guy, Tony, even has an artificial waterfall in his house. The flowing water source provides a steady stream of ammunition for the ice maker. As for the other one, there is no shortage of metal in this house. There can be no further delay. If Tony can't put on the steel suit, he will be no different from an ordinary person, and the situation on Pepper's side is still unclear. Building that. Hold your head tight, Kane yelled, and with a crash, he leaned back hard and knocked Tony directly downstairs. Fortunately, the railings were made of tempered glass, and the falling glass shards did not hurt him. To Tony. Can't you be gentle? Tony muttered, and hurried to his steel suit. Fortunately, after Kane's reminder, his suit was put on much faster. In a blink of an eye, Iron Man flew up. Boom! The electromagnetic pulse gun in Tony's hand was fired immediately, but the 2 masked men were agile, and they jumped to avoid it when Tony raised his hand. However, they also paused their attack and found a bunker first. Hid. Tony, don't worry about this, go to Pepper's quickly, in case Obadiah takes the risk. Kane shouted. But you, It's more convenient for me without you, let's go. Okay, be careful. Tony gritted his teeth, and began to maneuver the Mark III into the air, but the masked man who manipulated the metal seized the opportunity and pulled him with his palm, almost dragging him into the wall. Bone spear. A bone spear whizzed away, smashing the cover of the big man who was pulling the steel suit, interrupting his ability. Let's go. Kane yelled again, and Tony quickly flew away. The two big men looked like they were here to deal with him, and even their abilities were used to restrain his armor. Kane is gone. Seeing the tail flames of the steel suit disappear into the night sky, Kane finally felt relieved. Holding two white scythes in his hands, he said to the two big men, "Okay, it's my turn." Tony, who was flying towards the Stark Tower, connected to Pepper's phone. This time it was much quieter, only sporadic gunshots sounded, and they seemed to be far away. "Pep, how are you doing now?" "Gone." "Tony, why haven't you arrived yet?" "I don't have any major issues here. Morena has already dealt with most of Obaday's subordinates, but there are still some people who are preventing us from leaving. I suspect he has some other conspiracy." "Okay, I see. I'll be there right away." "Hold on." Mark III accelerated again. Tony was afraid that Pep would be worried, so he didn't tell her about his attack, but Obaday, who hadn't shown up until now, it still cast a shadow over his heart. After hanging up the phone, Pepper walked down the stairs following Morena, and the last armed person who fired was also blown away by her bursting arrows. Seeing that the main entrance of the building was ahead, their footsteps also quickened a few points. At this moment, a huge monster slowly landed at the door of Stark Tower from the air. It was a steel giant with a cold light all over its body, and a round blue luminous body on its chest reminded Pep of Tony's steel battle suit. "Oh body," Pepper shouted. She had seen the blueprint of this big guy in the computer data before, but she didn't expect Obadiah to be able to develop it so quickly. "Tisk tisk, I've always said that you are a very good woman, Pep." Obadry's voice came from the iron guy, and it sounded very relaxed and freehand. "Tony is so clueless that he didn't find yours advantages. With your ingenuity, being an assistant is really a waste of talent. How about it? Do you want to come to me as a deputy general manager?" "Don't even think about it, you lunatic who sells arms all over the world. I will never join forces with you. Just wait, when I reveal your true colors to the world, you will be finished." Xiaojiao said righteously refused. She is a kind woman, otherwise Tony would not have such a soft spot for her. "I'm crazy, ha ha ha, Pep, you are so naive. The US government is the biggest warmonger. How many arms in the world are flowed out by them, and I just pick up some crumbs they dropped, and, do you think they don't know that I sell arms to terrorists? Do you think how those arms are shipped? Let me tell you, Tony's decision to close the Stark Industries Arms Research Institute has angered the military. If you don't believe me, you can try it and see if your evidence can overthrow me. Of course, the premise is that you can survive tonight." Boom. Just when Obadiah's steel giant was about to rush over to catch Pep, Tony finally arrived in time and landed gracefully in front of him. "Oh, my dear Uncle Obadry, don't play this childish game anymore, and let's talk about your hiring to assassinate me, and how your stupid brain can study the miniaturization technology of the reactor really impresses me." Tony pointed to the energy source on the Iron Giant's chest and mocked. "Well, it's a gift from your little girlfriend. To be honest, I've been worrying about energy. I didn't expect this problem to be solved so easily. Tony, you are a genius in invention. It's a pity, but I'm not a traveler." "No, I didn't give it to him," Little Pepper hurriedly explained, her face flushed red because of it. "It's okay, Pep, I think I know where the eliminated arc reactor went." Of course, Tony would not be fooled by Obaday's clumsy scheming. He immediately thought of what Pep said that day. The old reactor couldn't be found anymore. After all, his home has complete security measures. Apart from him and Pepper, only Obadiah can come in and out easily. "Uncle Obadiah, it's too late to stop now. The arc reactor on your body was just made by me with crude tools in a cave in Afghanistan. Its energy storage effect is very poor. How much energy is left now? 50%. 40%. Give up. You can't beat me. Give up now and I won't take back your shares, and you can still have a decent ending." People are not grass, even if Obadiah treats him like this. When Tony really confirms when it was the person who grew up with him that hurt him, he still softened his heart. His parents died early and he once regarded Obadiah as his closest relative. This kind of emotion is not easy to forget. The Iron Giant stopped. Tony thought his words had worked, and just about to continue persuading him to get out of the Iron Giant and surrender, a pair of wing-like armors suddenly opened up behind the big guy, hiding two large jets underneath. Kong spewed out two waves of heat, and the reaction force pushed the giant to move forward rapidly. It grabbed Mark III and rammed forward. If Morena hadn't pulled Pep sharply, she would have been buried here. Clicked. With a bang, two iron guys smashed into the thick marble decorative wall in the lobby, and the steel giant rode on the Mark III and smashed it down with his fists, while Obadiah also roared loudly, "Decent. How many years have I worked for your Stark family, but you and your father treat me as a servant, and don't discuss anything with me, and the arms business is closed as soon as it is closed. You know that I was arrested in those days. Did the people in the military scold you like that? Is this what you mean by being decent? Then I will be 10,000 times more decent after I kill you. Hey, are you finally telling the truth? I remember that when I was attacked, the military didn't force you. You were just doing it for money and status. Don't put yourself in the role of the oppressed working people." The energy ports of both hands and feet exerted force at the same time, and Tony got out of the ruins. Just now, he had recognized Obadiah's essence, so that's good. He wouldn't care about the past with him. "Miss Morena, please take Pep away. I will be able to solve this imitation in a while. The brand new arc reactor provides enough power for the Mark III. At least the current Tony is much more comfortable than in the movie Up." Needless to say, Morena had already taken Pepper away from the lobby. The fight between these two iron guys might destroy the entire building at any time, so they had better stand outside for safety. Tony's tactics are very clear. Since his weight is not dominant, he adopts swimming, and consumes the energy of the Iron Giant through flexible movement and continuous attacks. He is well aware of how crude the first-generation arc reactor is, and the remaining energy will definitely not be able to support the arc. Bardai fought too long. "Morena, do you think we should call the police?" Pepper asked while watching the battle nervously. She didn't have any combat experience and couldn't see Tony's tactics. Batter has nothing to do. Morena couldn't help laughing. "Pep, just spare the New York police. They can't intervene in a battle of this level. Even if you call S.H.I.E.L.D., it's probably useless. S.H.I.E.L.D., by the way, a man left me a business card a few days ago. He said he is from S.H.I.E.L.D. If you need anything urgent, please call him." Pep took out his cell phone and dialed the Wilson's phone call. At this moment, the scene changed suddenly. The Iron Giant's shoulders suddenly opened, and two miniature missiles flew out, blowing Tony, who was caught off guard. How is this possible? According to Tony's calculations, the steel giant should have almost used up its energy, so how could it launch such an attack? Tony, maybe I am far behind you in terms of invention and creation, but I know what a real good weapon should look like. Your steel suit may look handsome, but your combat power is even 10 times that of my Iron Overlord. Not a single one. As soon as the words fell, the steel giant named Iron Overlord raised two more Vulcan cannons from the arms and fired at Tony. Tony, under the heavy rain of bullets, couldn't lift his head at all. Although the modified armor was not pierced, the rain of bullets from the Vulcan cannon also brought a huge impact to the entire suit. Boom, boom. Iron Bully continued to fire while approaching Tony, and at the same time fired two more missiles from the missile rack on his shoulder and blasted him out again. Seeing that Tony was suppressed, Obadiah couldn't help but feel a little proud. "Do you think that Iron Overlord size was designed for nothing? Its limbs have independent auxiliary energy, and there is enough space to install weapons. A perfect weapon platform, do you understand? Tony, you are too naive. Think that assembling all the most advanced things together is the strongest weapon. Wrong. Powerful firepower and solid armor are the most practical. Yes, your arc reactor is a powerful energy core, but you don't know how to use it. Now, I'm using you as a weapon display. This battle will become the best basis for the military to buy the Iron Overlord. You also will be forever remembered for this. Die." The Iron Overlord came to Tony, a sharp steel sword sticking out from under his right fist. It has to be said that Obadiah assembled the entire weapon research and development department to design and manufacture the Iron Overlord. No worse than Tony's iron suit. Just when Obadiah raised the steel sword and plunged it in, a thick spider silk fell from the sky, stuck to the sword surface and lifted it up. The steel sword was bent by this force, and it escaped dangerously from Tony's hand, passing overhead. Hey, big guy, I don't care about you rich people fighting freely in armor, but your voice is too loud to disturb the people. You know, the vigilante in New York City is obliged to teach you a lesson. Of course, such a snarky superhero is Spider-Man. Kane was afraid that something would happen to Tony, so he called Peter for reinforcements through Click. As for Korik himself, he just resurrected and didn't know how to get to Stark Tower quickly, so he could only stay in the bar and act as a bartender. Hey, that big guy, why is such a big guy so slow? Where's my whiskey? Kane and Peter are just unreliable, they always go out at night. An old man with a white beard and brown eyes said with a blank. The wine glass knocked on the bar and said that Kalik couldn't find the whiskey he wanted, so he had to grab a bottle of wine and fill it up for him, but he didn't notice that it said Polish distilled vodka on the bottle. After a while, the old man was helped out of the bar, shouting loudly, "Don't help me, I'm Stan Lee, the creator of the world, how can this little wine get me drunk?" Compared with Tony's side, Kane's battle is not too stressful. The abilities of the two masked men are indeed unique, but they are far behind Kane. Without Tony getting in the way, Kane immediately opened fire. The bone spear aimed mentally was obviously much more accurate than the icicles and iron spikes thrown by the two big men, and the speed was also faster. The big man who controlled the metal had just a bone spur pierced through the shoulder during the fight. Be careful. The big man in charge of the ice waved his hands, and a bunch of icicles flew over indiscriminately to block Kane's sight. Taking this opportunity, he quickly dragged his companions to the back of the wall. Where did this guy come from? The big man who controlled the metal gritted his teeth and pulled out the bone spear, and pulled a piece of metal from the wall next to him to bandage the wound. I don't know, Obadiah's information does not exist at all, and he is also a supernatural being from the point of view of his moves. What should we do? What else can I do? The Elder's order is to kill Tony Stark, not to fight with supernatural beings. From what they said just now, it can be heard that Stark should have gone to the company, and Obadiah is also there. Let's hurry over and kill Stark to complete the mission. What about the guy in the back? Kill Stark first, even if we die, Obadiah can't refuse. Okay, I'll listen to you. The two big men quickly made a decision, and the Iceman summoned a large piece of ice to block Kane's sight, and then the two immediately ran to the car hidden in the distance. The two who escaped so happily were beyond Kane's expectations. In fact, it was the first time he faced a real assassin in these two lives. Everything is to complete the task as their own responsibility, and it is their code of conduct to escape thousands of miles without a single blow. As for the dignity of warriors, it is completely out of their consideration. Originally, hand association ninjas should be such people. The style of acting has been distorted. Looking at the black car speeding away, Kane looked helpless. He didn't have a steel suit to fly, and he didn't even have a car when he came in Tony's car. Wait, Tony has a car. Kane was moved and ran back to the villa. Not long after, a customized R8 sports car came out of the garage and chased after the black car. The powerful push-back feeling made Kane secretly happy. After all, it was the sports car customized by Tony. It was incomparable with his second-hand Ford. He had the senses beyond ordinary people, and he dared to drive the car to the highest speed. Seeing that he would catch up with the car in front soon, he contacted Morena in his heart. Morena, is Tony okay? Ah, Miss Pep is fine, I don't know what Tony said. What's the situation? Peter came over just now, but the two of them together still failed to pose too much threat to Obadiah. And then Mr. Stark seemed to have come up with some idea, and took Obadiah's Iron Man to the sky. I don't know where I am now. Morena looked up at the sky, but she still didn't see the two of them, but she wasn't as worried as Little Pepper. From the battle just now, even though Tony's Mark III was not as powerful as Obadiah's the Iron Overlord, but the defense is not bad, at least those traditional weapons of the Iron Overlord can't do anything against him for a while. Fly away to the sky. Kane thought about it, but he didn't know what the hell Tony was up to, but the top priority was to get rid of the two supernatural killers in front of him. They were too much of a threat to Tony, who was unarmored, and they had to be eliminated first. At this moment, something seemed to be falling from the sky in Kane's field of vision. He leaned in front of the windshield and looked carefully. It was a big black guy, and not far above it seemed to be there are two tail flames approaching. It's Tony. Kane finally remembered. It seems that the antifreeze system of the Iron King was not installed, and he was frozen into a lump of ice after being taken to a high altitude by Tony. However, shouldn't he fall near the reactor of the Ark? And now I think those are useless. The big guy seems to be falling in this direction. Kane quickly stepped on the brakes. The tires of the R8 drew 4 long brake marks on the road, and finally stopped, and the big guy also fell on the road not far in front of the car, scattering ice on the ground, and the car in front seemed to recognize it too. He looked like an iron bully and stopped. The 2 big men got out of the car but didn't come over immediately, but hit aside. With a bang, just as Kane got out of the car, Mark number 3 landed in front of him. Tony was taken aback when he saw Kane. "Why are you here?" "I should say this. You fell in front of my car. This car seems to belong to me. The 2 killers have been solved." "No, they ran away. The car in front was there, and I drove after them." "Okay, let's deal with Obadiah first." Tony walked towards Iron Bully. The freezing effect was only temporary, and he had to control Obadiah while he was still awake. "Be careful." At this point, the 2 big men couldn't take it anymore. Obadiah is their ally of the 10 rings in the United States. If something happens to him, it doesn't matter whether Tony dies or not. Their mission will be screwed up. No way. The big man who controlled the metal immediately took a shot to control Tony again, and the other waved his hand, turning the frost attached to the Iron Tyrant into icicles and continued to attack Kane. Kane, who summoned the bone armor, didn't care about the icicles. With a wave of his hand, he still attacked the big man who controlled the metal with a bone spear. He restricted Tony too much. If he didn't kill him, Tony couldn't get close to Obadiah at all. But it seems that the 2 men also discussed tactics in the car before. The big man who controlled the ice pumped out all the water in the water tank of their car to form an ice shield in front of the 2 of them. The big man who controlled the metal also took the car. All the metal in the tank was pulled out to make a metal shield behind the ice shield. This double insurance finally blocked Kane's bone spear, but Tony was able to get out of control and rise into the sky. "Kane, I can't get close to Obadiah, think of a way." Tony said loudly. The guy who controls the metal is really annoying. He vowed to go back and research the anti-magnetic metal to make the steel suit, but tonight he can only provide support from a distance. Kane also has some headaches now. Although his bone armor is not afraid of the attacks of the 2 big men, he has nothing to do if they concentrate on defending. The bone spear is blocked, and the curse of aging cannot affect their abilities. There are no corpses around for him to explode. It seems that he can only fight in close quarters. Kane clenched his bone scythe, ready to launch a blood rush for close combat. At this moment, the Iron Overlord on the ground moved. "Kane, be careful." Tony could see clearly in the air. Just as Kane pounced on the double barrier formed by the masked men, Iron Bully shook and stood up. Although the Iron Overlord was only able to move just now, Obadiah didn't wake up just now. After falling from a high altitude, he had been trying to activate the Iron Overlord inside. Although he hadn't been successful, at least the camera was activated so that he could see the scene just now. Although Obadiah is a bit crazy, he is not stupid. Judging from the scene, the 2 killers of the 10 Rings gang are obviously not the opponents of the Skullface, but the guy among them who can manipulate metal is Tony's nemesis. They are urgent. Tony's pulse bombarded the Iron Tyrant and only made him shake. The thick steel shell provided enough defense for the Iron Tyrant, but he raised the Vulcan cannon and pointed it at Kane. Boom boom boom. The exaggerated bullets of the Vulcan cannon plowed a furrow on the ground. Fortunately, Kane reacted in time and ran to escape with blood. However, Obadiah did not intend to spare him. Now anyone who hinders him from killing Tony will be punished. He regarded it as a thorn in his side, and the muzzle of the Vulcan cannon kept chasing Kane, which also made him have no time to attack the 2 masked men. Of course, those 2 didn't just stand there stupidly. Who knows what other skills Kane has that can give them a cold shoulder, so a strange circle appeared at the scene. Kane chased the 2 big men, and the Iron King kept chasing and killing him. Tony kept firing at the Iron King in the sky, and the big man who controlled the metal kept trying to get close to Tony. These 4 groups of people chased each other, but no one can do anything to anyone for the time being, just waiting for one party to break through this vicious circle. Obadiah was really tired of chasing him, so he raised the missile on his shoulder again, aiming at Kane with one shot. Boom. The miniature missile is still a missile, and the violent explosion lifted Kane out. No, although Tony has minor problems of one kind or another, his nature is not bad. Seeing that Kane was bombed because of a word to help him, he finally became angry. This is different from when Pepper was attacked. The nervousness and worry, but the friendship between comrades who fought side by side. Tony has never been on the battlefield. Even if he was attacked or rescued in Afghanistan, he was still a bystander. In his eyes, those comrades in arms were just slogans for the US military. Until tonight, he fought with Kane and Peter. It was only when Obadiah and the Ten Rings gang killers that he felt what a comrade in arms was. That is a friendship that is completely unexperienced in a bustling city. Back to back, shoulder to shoulder, you can entrust each other's lives to each other, charge and bear together in the face of artillery fire, a feeling that can arouse the blood of the whole body. With a bang, Tony threw himself on Obadiah desperately, and under the guidance of Jarvis, he grabbed the information transmission device behind the head of Iron Bully. Unfortunately, only one was broken, and he was dragged away from the Iron Overlord by the big man who controlled the metal. Creaking, without Kane's harassment, the big man who controls the metal can finally put all his energy on Tony. This time he will not let Tony go again. Under the control of his hands, the steel suit is suspended, unable to move in the air. It is like a living target. Hee, Tony, it seems that you don't have any new tricks this time, so I'm sorry, tonight is your doomsday. Freeze him, I want to take the latest arc reactor from him, don't worry about it. It's broken, Obadiah ordered with a grin. The big man who controlled the ice immediately covered the Mark III with a layer of ice, which made it even more difficult for Tony to move. Obadiah immediately stretched out his palm and pointed it at him, and there was a metallic sound, and a three-headed mechanical claw stretched out from the center of the palm, and grabbed Tony's chest. Judging from the cold light at the tip of the mechanical claw, it is likely that Arc Tony was dead when the reactor was taken out. The two masked men grinned at the same time and increased the output of their powers. Just like what Obadiah said, nothing can happen now. As long as the new arc reactor is taken out and Tony is killed, their mission will be completed. An important step has been completed. Although the scientists under Obadiah's brains are not enough, but using two arc reactors as a cat and a tiger is still expected to reverse the specific production method, so that the new steel combat platform can be launched, and their Ten Rings gang there has also been a qualitative change in his strength. However, looking at the arc reactor that was about to be taken out, Obadiah also had a new idea. With this thing, he won the entire Stark Industries. Why should he cooperate with an organization like the Ten Rings? It is absolutely possible to become the largest and strongest arms dealer in the world. At that time, how can you take such a big risk to kill people with your own hands, and just give an order to decide the fate of countless people? That is the real power. Just when the mechanical claw was about to be inserted into the chest of the steel suit, the suit suddenly moved, and Obadiah couldn't help shouting, "Idiot, don't let him move, as I said, you pigs don't understand." When he looked back, he found that the big man manipulating the metal was looking at his chest in astonishment. At some point there was a thick bone spear piercing through the chest. Boom! Just when Obadiah was attracting attention, Tony suddenly raised his arm, and the miniature missile hidden in the arm of Mark III seized the opportunity to accurately hit the neck of the Iron Bully, and the soaring fire covered Obadiah's neck. Bardai's line of sight, several sensors were also damaged in the blast. Mark III, which has undergone anti-freeze treatment, broke free from the ice and lifted off again. Tony watched in surprise as Kane crawled out of the crater in the distance. Hey, pay attention next time, make sure your enemy is dead before going, otherwise, the end will be so miserable. Hey, buddy, I'm glad to see you alive. Tony flew diagonally above Kane, turned his head and said, "Okay, let's talk about the past later. Now that the number of people is fair, it's time to start the second round." Kane flexed his muscles and bones, and immediately rushed up. Tony also came first, and two electromagnetic guns attacked the Iron Bully. The only surviving big man with supernatural powers had a bitter look on his face. He didn't think it was fair. Both he and the magnetic man couldn't do anything about Kane. How can he perform better now that he is left alone? Iron Overlord, it seems that Kane has some advantages. The problem is that Tony will definitely not let him come to support so easily. He has no choice but to use the ice to delay Kane's approach while hiding beside the Iron Bully. Coming to the side of the iron bully does not mean safety. Tony and Obadiah's shooting caused stray bullets to fly. If the big man was not really desperate, he would never choose to hide here. Speaking of it, Obadiah's Iron Overlord is really a good design. The Iron Overlord with gunpowder weapons all over his body has reduced energy consumption to the extreme. As long as he does not take off into the air to fight, it can operate even with a waste arc reactor. Long time. However, Tony's steel battle suit is almost inferior in terms of combat effectiveness. Although the close-fitting Mark III contains countless latest technologies, due to the size limitation, powerful weapons cannot be installed, and the missiles on the arms are all there is only one shot, which also leads to a serious shortage of Tony's offensive ability. Until now, he can't find any weapons that can threaten the Iron Tyrant except for the pulse gun in his hand. The threat is not very high, and the high consumption of the pulse gun can make the remaining energy of Mark III drop rapidly. Kane, I need support. Although I don't know if Kane's magic has any effect on the Iron King, but he is the only one who can help Tony at present, so Tony had to ask him for help. Attack his chest with all your strength. Kane gave the command first, and in an instant he seized an opportunity, using a bone prison technique to firmly lock the ice-controlling man in place. Tony didn't ask any questions, and directly increased the power according to his words, and pulse-bombed Iron Bully King's chest with both hands. The powerful impact forced it to lose its balance and fall backwards. No. Boom. The Iron Overlord sat on the ground with his buttocks, the dust was flying and blood was splashing everywhere, and the last killer of the 10 Rings gang also died. Do you have any way to pry open this iron guy? Taking the opportunity, Tony flew to Kane and asked. Do you think he manipulates this big guy by his own actions? Kane asked, staring at the Iron King. If that's the case, the curse of aging might be useful, and steel can't stop magic. I'm afraid not. Tony asked Jarvis to call out the design drawings of the Iron Overlord at the first time, and found that this big guy used more transmissions similar to tanks, but that's right, the design concept of this thing was originally coming from the battlefield. If they are all driven by their own movements like the steel suit, it will be troublesome in case of leg cramps or something. After all, there are many sudden situations in the human body. Then what's his weakness? Kane is also scratching his head a little bit. The Rothma priests are fighting against the demon army in Sanctuary. Those guys even have siege weapons made of meat. Priest Rothma, they didn't have the habit of developing these iron guys. They believed in their strong bodies, but now facing the Iron King, Kane found that the few spells he was good at were not very useful. HMPH, what a useless piece of trash, and the 10 Rings gang is nothing more than that. I originally wanted to rely on them to deal with you without anyone noticing. It seems that I have to do it myself this time. Sure enough, I am the only one who can be relied on. Sting, the Iron Overlord stood up again, and there was a trace of electric sparks from the back of his head. It was the damage Tony caused to Opadri before, but unfortunately, he only broke a tube connected to the respiratory system. After the vent is opened, it has no effect on the combat effectiveness of Iron Overlord. Now only powerful bombs or smoke bombs may be able to harm him, but I have run out of mine. There is no way, I can only do my best. Kane, you help me attract his attention, I will come from behind. Try again at the armor connection of the armor. Tony said seriously. He became very serious when life and death were at stake, and he didn't care about his own safety, which greatly changed Kane's perception of him. Tony, it's better for you to attract his attention, and leave the rest to me. Kane smiled slightly. As long as Iron Bully is not invincible, he will naturally have a way to kill him. Tony glanced at Kane suspiciously, but didn't speak again, because Obadiah had already manipulated Iron Overlord to rush over, but after meeting Kane, this white-haired young man always gave him the feeling that he was stable and reliable. In addition to the mysterious magic on his body, it was safer than trying his best by himself. Thinking of this, he didn't say any more, and rushed up to fight with Obadiah again. Explosions and smoke bombs, it seems that I can do that. Obadiah, next time, don't bring your teammates to fight together. For Priest Rothma, your teammates may become my weapons at any time. Kane looked at the scene on the field, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became wider and wider, matching it with the rising white flames on his body. Tony, make him take a step back. Kane shouted as he rushed over. Tony nodded, immediately turned over and raised a little higher. then turned his head down, spraying flames from his hands and feet at the same time. The powerful jet force made him hit the Iron King like a meteor, and a heavy punch forced Obadiah to retreat. Obediently took a step. Boom! An explosion sounded at Iron Overlord's feet, and the continuous impact made him unable to stabilize his figure anymore, and fell to the ground with a bang. Where did the bomb come from? At this moment, Obadiah in Iron King was also a little confused. He didn't believe that it was a missile hidden by Tony. He knew Tony very well. He would have used such a powerful weapon just now. He is not a guy who likes to keep one hand. So, it can only be that skull face, but judging from his shot just now, it looks more like those two guys from the 10 Rings gang, with a bias towards supernatural powers, and it doesn't look like he can hide a bomb on his body. When Obadiah was thinking wildly, Kane was not idle, and he appeared on Iron Bully in a blood run. Looking at the huge skull mask with soaring white flames in front of the screen, Obadiah seemed to see the god of death smiling at him. I bring the undead who died under the guns of terrorists all over the world to say hello to you, Mr. Obadiah. After saying this, before Obadiah could respond, Kane turned over and jumped to the ground, and then pulled his legs just run. Boom! Another explosion sounded, and this time it was on Iron Bully. Tony could see clearly from the sky that it was the body of the big man who died at the beginning. When Kane teleported to Iron Bully, he also put that the corpse was placed on its chest, and it was the other corpse that was crushed to death by it that first blew up the Iron Overlord. Corpse explosion. Tony finally remembered that he had seen this trick before. In Afghanistan, when Kane rescued him, he discussed with Kane about this kind of invisible explosion. He didn't expect to see it again in the United States. It's his own fault. The two 10 Rings members who came to the United States from thousands of miles to help Obadiah, now they have become stumbling bombs on his way forward. Tisk tisk, just thinking about it is so happy. This explosion is disgusting. No wonder you and Frank have the best relationship. Both of you have such bloody fighting styles. Tony landed next to Kane, and the powerful impact of the corpse explosion caused some pieces of meat to splash on him. The scene reminded him of his days in Afghanistan with Frank. Obadiah this time. Tony raised his mask and said to Kane once he felt that there was no threat, and he would return to his playboy state. Go back and comfort her, women, you know, do you want to take a ride, the windy one? Before the words fell, there was a sound, and the Iron Overlord stood up again. Do you think this kind of small explosion can kill me? It's too naive, but you have done a good job, now bear my anger bar. All the weapon compartments on Iron Bully's body were opened, and the Vulcan cannon, rocket nest, and missile rack were all aimed at Tony and Kane. Tony grabbed Kane and was about to take off, but Kane held him back. Don't worry, listen to the last words of an old rascal. Last words, hee hee, are you crazy? Obadiah smiled. Through the battle just now, he knew that the two guys on the opposite side couldn't bear such a saturation blow, and he didn't know where the kid got his confidence. Crazy, maybe, but you can try to open fire. No one could see Kane's expression under the cover of the mask, but from his relaxed tone, it could be heard that he was not worried at all. Kane. Tony opened all the nozzles, and was going to take Kane away immediately if the situation was not good. At worst, he would contact Colonel Rhodes to let the US military solve this big trouble. It's okay, Tony, he's dead. Dead, haha, I feel like I've never been so healthy. Obadiah laughed, pressed the weapon button at the same time, and said with a smirk, you are all dead. Unexpectedly, all the weapons stayed there quietly, none of them were activated. What's going on here? Obadiah looked down, only to find that his exposed skin showed a strange green color, and he was completely out of control. When he looked carefully, it seemed that the green skin was still there. It is slowly melting. Tony also asked the same question, because something was obviously wrong with the Iron Overlord. Not only was the weapon system not moving, but now even the Iron Overlord himself was completely motionless. Death Embrace, a variant of corpse explosion, detonates the resentment of the deceased at the same time as it causes an explosion. Every piece of corpse is infused with the resentment of the undead, causing it to contain deadly poison. Even the explosion, the air in the center will be filled with this toxin. Tony involuntarily moved away from the corpse debris at his feet. What is the difference between your spell and a nuclear bomb? Of course, as long as I think about it, these poisons will disappear immediately. After all, it's just magic, and it's still under my control. Seeing Kane's hand slapping his shoulder, Tony couldn't help swallowing. Drooling, he swore that Kane must not be angered until he worked out a countermeasure. Magic is really terrifying. How is he now? Tony pointed to the Iron Overlord. I don't know. In fact, this is the first time I cast this spell. Its damage range is too large. I don't dare to use it indiscriminately in the city. Kane told the truth. This is a strange kind among the priests of Rothma. The spell he created was betrayed by his wife, betrayed by his friends, and thrown into the swamp to die. He is simply the template of the protagonist in Keaton's novel. In the end, he was rescued by the passing necromancer Jostin, but his skin was all festered and stained. He was poisoned by the poisonous gas in the swamp. Therefore, determined to revenge, he intensively studied poison science and created this spell. Another spell he transformed was Death Nova. He transformed it into Plague Nova and finally killed his enemy. A genius blinded by hatred. What happened next? Tony sighed. He felt that this experience was similar to his. If it hadn't been for the suffering in Afghanistan, he would probably be silently killed by Obadiah in the midst of debauchery. Kill. I heard from teacher Rothma that he has been working as a teacher in the sect since he took revenge, and has never been out again. Kane and the others walked up to Iron Bully, trying to open him to confirm Obadiah's situation. Come here and give me a hand. Let me do it. Tony called up the blueprint of the Iron Overlord, found the external switch device, and opened the engine room of the Iron Overlord. A pungent green smoke rose from inside. Fortunately, Tony had turned on the purification device, and Kane was not affected at all. The smoke cleared, and only a crooked bone remained on the seat in the cabin. Up there, Obadiah looked utterly dead. I really don't understand. He owns 30% of Stark Group's shares and is already one of the top richest people in the world. Why is he still not satisfied? Tony shook his head and sighed. Obadiah really watched him grow up. It ended up like this in the end. People's greed is endless, and sometimes it may not be what he wants. Maybe there are countless people behind him to push him. The military industry of your company originally involved a lot of interest groups. When he came to this world and participated in it himself, Kane felt more and more that there was too much gap between reality and the movie. A genius inventor who only knows how to spend time and money, even if he owns most of the company's shares, it can't affect Austrian at all. Bidet's status, but he has to try his best to contact terrorists far away in Afghanistan to kill Tony. What is he trying to do? Is it just to avoid suspicion? In addition, the behavior of the US military is also worthy of suspicion. Any weapon tests must be carried out in other places. There are some uninhabited places in Nevada that are convenient for testing. The US military has always put new weapons tests there. Why did the Jericho missile? He was going to Afghanistan, and Tony had to go there himself. There were too many suspicious things in it. Just when the two were standing on the Iron Bully, a motorcade from a distance approached, and the first car hadn't stopped yet, and Pepper opened the door and rushed out. When Tony saw it was her, he also hurried away past. Regardless of Tony's behavior of throwing dog food all over the ground, Kane rushed to the man who got out of the cab. You guys are late again. Coulson smiled wryly, walked up to him and said, this time it was really an accident, and something serious happened, and I'm afraid it has something to do with you. What? Kane couldn't help raising his voice. Dude, I just solved the Hulk incident, and then I had a fight with a war robot, and then you told me that there was another accident and you told me I'm concerned. Phil, you're not enough of a friend like that. This time it was really an accident. Even our director was alarmed, and this matter really has something to do with you. I'm afraid even your friend Spider-Man was also involved. The conference hall of Stark Tower once again brought together countless news media, waiting for the rich man who kept talking, but this time their focus was not on which female star he slept with or what new weapon he invented, but another exciting news. They didn't wait too long this time, and Tony quickly walked up to the rostrum in a suit and leather shoes, accompanied by his friend, Colonel Rhodes of the military. It's been a long time since I've seen you all, so I'll read it this time. Tony smiled at the audience and took out a small note. I'm suspected of being involved in the fights at Stark Tower and beyond. I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, you thought we would trust one of your personal bodyguards, who happened to be there in armor. A beautiful reporter interrupted his official tone. Sorry, I know it's hard to be convincing, but it's one thing to question official statements, it's quite another to randomly speculate that I'm a superhero. I didn't say you're a superhero. The beautiful reporter interrupted him again. Based on what she knew about Tony, she couldn't believe that this irresponsible playboy would become a superhero who killed people. He told her last time the interview I promised after going to bed has not been fulfilled yet. Tony pouted helplessly, thinking of Frank fighting in Afghanistan, Peter wandering between New York buildings, and Kane who saved him many times last night, and said again, obviously, I'm not a hero, you know, I have many character flaws, and I have made quite a few mistakes, most of which you all know. Colonel Rhodes saw that Tony was obviously going off topic, so he hurried over, but he stopped him with his hand. But after last night, and the previous experience in Afghanistan, I very much hope to be one of them. The reporters in the audience started to stir up a commotion. It seemed that they could get a big news today. Well, the truth is, I am Iron Man. With a bang, the venue exploded, and all the media reporters couldn't sit still. They all rushed to the rostrum with their microphones in their hands. This is the first superhero who is willing to appear in front of the public after World War II, and he is also a super rich man. This topic is simply too big. At the other end of the conference hall, Nick Fury led a few agents and stood there quietly. A well-dressed lady frowned and said in a low voice, "Sir, is it appropriate for him to reveal his identity like this?" "It's okay. Agent Hill, a superhero whose true identity is known to the public may be able to give them a more real feeling, and, he is not the first, the one during World War II performed well, inspiring us to overcome one terrible enemy after another." Yes, Agent Hill agreed and stepped back, but he seemed to be noncommittal about the answer. The superhero of World War II didn't have so many flaws in his character. Tony's words spread all over the world through TV signals, and even some places as far away as Afghanistan got his news through satellite signals. Boom! The bald man who had Meadow body punched the table, and the long table made of solid wood fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Just as he was about to say something, a man in black came from outside. "Push the door and enter." Seeing his appearance, the bald head immediately stood up and bowed to him. "Master Li Chu, why are you here?" The black-robed man took off his hood, revealing an Asian face. "Chasm, your continuous failures during this period have seriously affected the Master's plan. Why do you think I came here?" "I'm sorry, Master Li Chu." The bald-headed elder Chasm, who has always shown himself fierce, was sweating profusely just because of this sentence, and his voice trembled a little. "I just want to increase our strength faster. I really didn't expect so many accidents to happen. HMPH, if it wasn't because you had a good intention, do you think you would still be alive to see me?" The man named Li Chu sat on Chasm's seat and snorted coldly. However, without waiting for Chasm's answer, he continued to ask, "The Punisher is still attacking our camp?" "Yes, he is always alone and disappears. It is difficult for us to guard against it. We lost a lot of manpower and destroyed 2 training camps," Chasm reported truthfully. Li Chu frowned. "Where's the dragon blood potion?" "After being attacked for the first time, I transferred all related things to the secret base, so there was basically no loss." Li Chu's brows finally relaxed. "Good job. No amount of baby soldiers can fulfill your ambition. Only high-end combat power is our goal. As long as we keep the dragon's blood potion, the loss of ordinary camps and manpower will be reduced." "All acceptable. Thank you for your magnanimity." Chasm finally breathed a sigh of relief. If he was accused of incompetence, even though he was an elder, he would have no good fruit. "My lord, are you here for the dragon's blood potion?" Now that he has got rid of the threat of death, Chasm's head starts to work rapidly. The destruction of several training camps in the area obviously does not alarm the lord. And the arrival of this manager Li Chu seems to be for the dragon's blood potion. "You have been studying it here for a while, how have you gained?" Li Chu glanced at Chasm, noncommittal to his behavior of showing off his cleverness. "My lord, the dragon's blood potion has powerful medicinal properties, and requires extremely high physical fitness for the test product. You also know that there are not many people in this poor place in Afghanistan who can eat enough, so the success rate is extremely low," Chasm replied. "Moreover, we found in the experiment that even if there is no dead test subject, there is a high probability of becoming a living dead who loses his mind. It is not very practical on the battlefield." Li Chu nodded, and said expressionlessly, Very well, you have lived up to the organization's trust in you, but our next plan needs to be adjusted. Please make it clear, my lord, Chasm said respectfully. In his cognition, Li Chu was able to occupy a high position only because of his loyalty. In other words, he was just a mouthpiece. The plan, he said, must be that lord. What he did, he couldn't help but be disobedient. Gather all the dragon's blood potions and test items, gather them at the port of Karachi within a week, and ship them away. Chasm was stunned. The headquarters of the 10 Rings had been in Central Asia. Where would something as important as the dragon's blood potion be transported? Li Chu seemed to have heard his heart, and said sharply, "Don't think about things you shouldn't know, this is the will of the adults." Yes. Chasm quickly lowered his head and replied, not daring to think about it. What? Prison escape? Are you joking? In the morning, when the Cane Bar had the least number of guests, Peter's screams almost spread to the street. Carrick walked to the door and looked around as if nothing had happened, then turned and opened the door to him, closed. To be precise, it was a prison robbery. It was just last night, so our support arrived so late. Coulson smiled awkwardly. Normally he would not speak out about this kind of scandal, but it is related to the people in front of him. Anyway, he felt that it was better for him to tell the truth, and he was counting on them to help him. Is there any difference? You are a global intelligence agency above the US government, and your prisons are also robbed by anyone who wants to rob them. In fact, we are not as capable as you imagined, and the one who robbed the prison is not an ordinary person. Coulson tried hard to defend himself. Forget it, Peter, no matter how loud you yell, something has already happened. We need to know how serious it is. Seeing what Peter wanted to say, Kane pressed his shoulders. What they should do, how to minimize the harm caused by escaped criminals is their job. Kane always feels that things have happened more and more frequently recently, and it seems that there is a secret behind it that is affecting all of this. Coulson glanced at Kane gratefully, and began to talk about what happened last night. On the east side of Manhattan, there is a bridge between Queens and the Bronx that leads to the open sea. One place, Rikers Island. Rikers Island has been the seat of the municipal prison since 1935. This prison, covering an area of 1.65 square kilometers, can accommodate tens of thousands of prisoners, including many heinous felons. It is called by New Yorkers that even God does not want to stop the place. Of course, no one knows that the Shield Super Prison is also set up here, just 1 kilometer below Rikers Island Prison, where there is no sunlight all year round, surrounded by thick soil, and only one elevator can pass on top of that. Even the most ferocious psychic would think twice about his ability to get out alive before breaking out. It is such an impenetrable place, but tonight it ushered in a group of uninvited guests. A guard on duty was leaning against the railing of the outer wall of the prison boredly, smoking a cigarette. The cigarette butt flickered in the night. It cannot be said that he was careless. The waters around Rikers Island are rich in sharks, and no one would be stupid to sneak in here from the sea. However, there are no absolutes in the world. A much bigger guy quietly approached the shore from the sea. It was a small submarine. From its special appearance, it was completely impossible to tell where it belonged. The submarine hovered quietly. In the sea, a hatch door was quietly opened from the top of it, and a group of people in black diving suits came out in a file, completely ignoring the sharks swimming next to them, and boarded the reef off the shore of Rikers Island. Whoosh! A crossbow bolt shot into the back of the smoking guard on the outer wall, and the neurotoxin smeared on the crossbow bolt immediately paralyzed his throat, making him unable to make any sound until he died. Immediately afterwards, a few hooks hit the wall, and the group of men in black climbed up swiftly. They squatted on the top of the wall. The leader looked at the microcomputer on his wrist and made a few gestures. The group divided into 2 groups and ran in different directions. In the prison for ordinary people on the ground of Rikers Island, most of the prisoners fell asleep early because there were no entertainment activities. Only some energetic guys chatted with each other at the door of the cell. The guards thought they were too noisy. They all went back to the monitoring room to drink a cup of coffee, chatting and spanking to pass the time. No one noticed that the screen in the monitoring room flickered suddenly, as if it was disturbed by something. Immediately afterwards, without knowing what went wrong, the electronic doors of all the cells were suddenly opened, which shocked all the criminals. Oh, Hell, what's going on? Hurry up and close the cell door. Finally, a guard noticed the abnormality and pointed at the monitor and shouted, but unfortunately, no matter how hard they tried, the cell door didn't budge. Seeing the prisoners in the cell poking their heads and walking towards the corridor, the guards were going crazy. Although some prisoners here were sent in for petty theft, there were also some serious criminals who came in because of murder. Well, if they ran out, their jobs would be lost. Call the police and contact the armed guards outside. The others will follow me and block the exit. The captain of the guard made a decisive decision and led the people to the outermost door of the cell. At the same time, he also prayed that the door would not malfunction. You must know that the number of prisoners is dozens of times that of the guards. He only holds a pistol and an electric baton. He doesn't have the confidence to stop those guys. It didn't work out as expected. When he led people to the prison door, the most ferocious guys had already rushed out. Most of these murderers who were sentenced to life imprisonment would not give up this chance of freedom. Seeing the guards, instead of being afraid, they rushed forward with grinning. Boom! With a gunshot, as if it was the horn that opened the gate of hell, the battle between the prisoners and the guards became fierce in an instant. The guards who were scattered all over the prison rushed into the prison, no matter they were on duty resting. While they didn't notice, a group of men in black had taken over the vantage point of the prison and had broken down the gate to the mainland. At the core of the prison, 4 guards armed with automatic rifles watched the opposite door vigilantly. They were wearing black combat uniforms and looked completely different from the prison guards. Behind them, an iron door was tightly closed. There was a sound of footsteps outside, and they pulled the bolts of their guns and pointed their guns at the gate. In their duty, they could shoot at anyone who approached here without permission. Soon, the footsteps stopped, and just when they were wondering, a round paper-thick metal disc flew in from under the closed iron door. Squeak! A piercing sound suddenly erupted in this narrow space, and the 4 guards covered their ears in pain and fell down. The gate opened, and the group of men in black who had just appeared on the outer wall of the prison walked in with guns. The leader shot each of the 4 guards one by one. The microcomputer is aimed at an electronic keyhole next to the iron door. With a beeping sound, the iron door soon opened, revealing an elevator room, leaving 2 people guarding the elevator, and the others immediately followed the leader into the elevator, pressed the only button and went down. Gallop away. Lone Island, the code name of SHIELD's super prison in New York. The prison guards here are not randomly recruited from the society. In fact, they are all composed of SHIELD's field combat teams, who are on duty here on a regular basis. It can prevent them from becoming psychopathic due to depression, and secondly, it can ensure the combat effectiveness of the guards. Even if the criminals here are tightly locked up, they are not harmless. At this moment, most of the combat team members had gathered in the elevator room. Although the 4 team members above had died, the surveillance cameras gave them all the truthful feedback of the incoming enemies and their tactics. The captain of the guard team acted decisively, opened all the doors in the corridor, and asked the team members to disperse their positions to reduce the impact of the shock bomb on them. It's a pity that the incoming enemy is far more cunning than they imagined. No one noticed that a wisp of faint smoke floated in from the vents all over the cell. Soon, with the sound of guns falling, all the people in the island prison fell into a coma. Ding! The door of the elevator opened, and people in black wearing gas masks came in one after another. This time, they did not refill the guards on the ground. Instead, they went to the door of each cell where special prisoners were held under the sign of the leader. The people in black took out a special gun from behind and fired at the special prisoner in the cell. What was fired from the muzzle was not a bullet, but a tube of green potion. The special potion was quickly injected into these unconscious criminals. Seeing this, the people in black immediately put away their weapons, quickly ran to the elevator room, and took the elevator back to the ground without any hesitation. The prisoners who fell into a coma due to the anesthetic began to groan unconsciously, and at the same time, a strange green color spread all over their bodies along their blood vessels. Hard cuticle. A burly man opened his eyes, his pupils flashed green, and then turned red again, as bright as blood. The big man stood up from the bed, took a step forward, and with a clatter, the shackles on his feet stretched straight. The big man looked down impatiently, and struggled hard, and the alloy shackles were broken by him. He looked surprised at the broken shackles, then grinned, and broke free of the handcuffs on his hands. The big man didn't think about where this sudden power came from. He had already stayed in this dark place enough, and as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he would try his best to get out. Boom! The door of the cell where he was imprisoned was pushed open by his strange force and hit the opposite wall, and a pair of palm prints were impressively printed on the cell door that bullets could not penetrate. The big man who broke through the shackles did not escape immediately, but turned around and walked inside. After a while, he came to another prison door and looked inside. There seemed to be no one in the empty cell, but the big man still rushed inside. Shouted, "Brother, are you in there? I'm here to save you." A strange thing happened. The side of the empty cell suddenly twisted, and then a thin man appeared. This man had no hair on his body, and his smooth skin was covered with tiny scales. Looking at the big man at the door, he also smiled. "Hurry up, brother, I can't wait to get out of this ghostly place." "Okay, stand back." There was another loud bang, and this cell door was also opened, but the other cell door was also broken open at the same time. The two brothers turned their heads to look, and saw a huge figure filling the entire corridor. "Hee, I'm out too." "Okay, let's go together." The elder brother greeted the giant, and the three of them walked out. "Wait a minute," a sharp voice sounded from the next cell. "Brother Craven, help me out." "And I. Don't leave me behind." Two other voices also sounded nearby. "Give me a reason." The big man named Craven smiled. Although he is not a good person, he has nothing in common with these guys. "Hey, because you brothers need us." The sharp voice sounded again. "Need you guys? I don't think so." Craven picked up the rifle of the guard next to him and broke it with a little force with his hands, telling those guys how strong he was. "Really, why would you be caught here if you are so powerful? That little thing that swings around is not so easy to deal with." HMPH. Craven snorted coldly. "Spider-Man is his nightmare, and now his only goal is to hunt that guy. I'm not the same now. Spider-Man will definitely be torn apart by me." "Well, maybe you can kill him easily after the mutation, but can you guarantee that you won't be caught before killing him? This is the prison of S.H.I.E.L.D., and you know their intelligence-gathering capabilities." HMPH. "So what if they find out? Who can threaten me now?" Tisk tisk tisk. "You are too confident." An ugly face appeared on the cell door, with green spots on its blue-gray skin, and a flat nose that seemed to have no nasal bones. He opened his mouth, and his too sharp the canine teeth bared. "Let's not talk about whether you can win against Spider-Man now. Is S.H.I.E.L.D. alone such a simple organization? Have you heard of them before they imprisoned us? Look here again." The cage of people with abilities shows that they have a wealth of experience in handling special events. If they were not breached from the outside this time, it would not be so easy for us to get out. Having said that, the strange man raised his arm to look at the green spots above and the special potion bullet on the ground, and said again, "Besides, don't you find it strange that those jailbreakers just injected us with this potion and left? I didn't even say a word. What is their purpose? You don't think they are sent by the heavens to save us, do you?" Craven stopped talking. He was self-aware. For super criminals like them, it would be considered an extrajudicial favor if he was struck to death by lightning. Then what do you think should be done? "Hey, let me say that now is no longer the era of fighting alone. We should also keep pace with the times and unite together so that we can fight against these government organizations and superheroes. After all, from a single person, it's a vulnerable group." Craven looked at the ugly-faced man, and then at the guys in the cells behind him. He couldn't help but nodded. "Rhino, let them out. It is good." Boom, boom, a few muffled sounds came from below Riker's Island, and the demon was released back into the world again. Chapter 71. So, how many super criminals have escaped? Peter had an ominous premonition after listening to Coulson's inferences from the traces of the scene. Before he met Kane, most of the super criminals in New York City were him. He shot to arrest him, so when he heard that the super prison was robbed, his reaction was the biggest. There are a total of 8 super criminals in the island prison, 6 of them escaped in this prison robbery, and 4 of them are related to you," Coulson said embarrassingly. Plop, Peter slumped down on the stool with a look of lovelessness on his face. Kane shook his head and asked, "Which 6 are they?" "Hunter Craven and his younger brother Chameleon, Scorpion, Rhinoceros, Vampire Mobius, and Dr. Octopus, who has just been imprisoned." Do you have their basic information? Except for Dr. Octopus, the other names are a bit unfamiliar to Kane. He needs to know the detailed information of the other party, but fortunately, they were all prisoners. Shield, get to know them better. Well, I brought them all, here. Coulson took out the 6-point information from the briefcase. Judging from the thickness, it is obviously much more detailed than the previous hand association. While flipping through the documents, Kane asked casually, by the way, you just said that there are still 2 criminals who haven't escaped from prison. I'm curious, are there any super criminals who are so law-abiding? Well, indeed, we were quite strange at first, but one of them said that he didn't want to commit a crime himself, and wanted to perform well to get his sentence reduced. Speaking of which, he is also an acquaintance of yours. Oh, who is it? Kane raised his head curiously. Drive Lizard. Drive Connors. Peter finally recovered a little after hearing the name. Yes, but his appearance has also changed, and he has returned to the appearance of Dr. Lizard, but the strange thing is that his sanity does not seem to be affected, but he took the initiative to explain to us what happened during the prison break. Kane and Peter glanced at each other. It was very strange that the transformed Dr. Lizard could still maintain his sanity. Phil, can we meet Dr. Connors? Maybe we can get some information from him that we don't know yet. Kane looked up and said, he felt that he was a little closer to the truth. Coulson hesitated. After all, Kane and the others are only civilians. It is somewhat inappropriate to take them into the secret prison of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is even more impossible to let Dr. Lizard out. Completely turned into a lizard man, who knows how long his sanity can be online. If he runs away again, it will be a disaster. Coulson still remembers what he did last time. If it succeeds, even the S.H.I.E.L.D. All agents in the New York branch have the potential to become lizardmen. It's okay, Phil, take them there. A familiar voice came from the door. Kane looked back, and it was Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., who was the only one who had the right to give orders to Coulson. Looking at Kane and the others, Nick couldn't help but think of his plan again. He explained to Coulson, the top priority now is to catch these super criminals back, so we need to gather all the forces that can be gathered, and I will also bring a tech consultant came in, hoping to make a difference. A group of people came to Rikers Island prison, and Kane saw a familiar figure typing on the keyboard in the control room. Hey Tony, are you their tech advisor? Of course, otherwise, who else in New York City do you think is qualified? Tony greeted Kane with a smile, and then went back to continue his work. After typing on the keyboard for a while, he thought about it, then turned around to look again, and saw a box with network equipment written on it, and he opened it. Aha, I found you. Tony reached in, squeezed out a metal bug-like thing, and showed it to Nick and the others. Hey, this thing controls your central computer, and then allows the entire prison. The system was controlled by the outside world, resulting in the tragedy of last night. Nick took the little bug, looked at it, and handed it to the agent behind him. But how did they find the ventilation equipment on the isolated island? Our system operates independently, and capturing Rikers Island doesn't mean they can easily find it. Into the island. Tony shrugged. Then how do I know? Maybe your architectural drawings were found by them, maybe your system was hacked, or, simply, there are ghosts among you. These are all possible. It's impossible, there is no such person in S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick said firmly. Really, as the boss of a secret agent, don't lie to yourself. Even if you can't impress a person with money, there are many other things that will affect his decision-making. The heart of a person is the most elusive. Kane interrupted suddenly. The ghost, this possibility is too great. Even if the whole thing is not done by Hydra, it is not surprising that they did something that would cause trouble for S.H.I.E.L.D. At least the busy S.H.I.E.L.D. It also allows some things to run smoothly. After hearing Kane's words, Nick was silent for a while, and then immediately stopped discussing the matter. Let's go, let's meet the 2 people who didn't escape from prison. A group of people took the elevator to the island prison, and they saw Dr. Lizard in the interrogation room. Peter, I'm so glad to meet you. Dr. Connors has indeed changed back into a lizard, but from his words, it can be heard that his character is still the kind Dr. Connors. Drive Connors, why did you become like this again? Peter asked suspiciously. This is not a good sign. Dr. Connors told Peter and the others in detail what he knew. In fact, he woke up earlier than Craven. The medicine was absorbed as soon as it entered his body, and he also turned back into a lizard immediately. However, when another substance contained in the potion intended to affect his body structure and soul, another substance in his body played a role, not only preventing the transformation of that substance, but also preventing him from after turning into a lizard. He became manic, and then regained his sanity. He didn't respond to the call of those villains, but pretended to be awake and listened to their conversation quietly. So, it was because of this potion that you changed back to your original form. Kane and the others picked up the special potion bullet on the table, and he noticed a familiar smell from the potion left inside. Doctor, have you noticed Dr. Otto? When did he transform? Kane continued to ask. Dr. Connors recalled, and replied, I remember when you said that. He woke up at about the same time as me, because he was locked opposite me, and when I woke up, I heard something from him. The sound of the shackles should also belong to one of the earlier awakenings. Kane, what did you find? Nick heard something special in Kane's words, and asked quickly. I think this matter may have something to do with the devil again. A white flame rose from Kane's hand, and the special bullet was burned away, leaving only a small drop of green liquid hanging on his palm, attracting everyone's attention. What is this? Nick Fury's face drooped. It can be seen from the records of S.H.I.E.L.D. that things related to mythology should not be taken lightly, such as the dragon jewel in Norse mythology. Devil's blood. Last time I extracted the same thing from Dr. Otto's body fluid. According to my guess, this is the source of his madness. The devil's blood contains a lot of negative energy that will affect the human soul, and, with the long-term transformation of demon blood, humans may even be completely corrupted into demons in the end. Dr. Otto was able to wake up so early because he was corrupted by this thing before. Kane said the seriousness of the problem come out. This world is not a sanctuary world, and there are not so many Nephilims fighting side by side with him. Although he doesn't know where the blood of these demons comes from, but to protect this world from being corrupted by demons, he needs powerful allies. You mean, someone or an organization is assisting the devil in corrupting the world? Nick Fury's face darkened even more. To the secret prison guarded by S.H.I.E.L.D. But don't you find it strange that this organization tried its best to infiltrate here, and then retreated after injecting all the super criminals with demon blood that can strengthen them, without even telling them who the savior is, and what is their purpose? What is it? Tony raised a question. This matter is not in line with common sense. If there is really that kind of organization that only pays without expecting anything in return, then they will not do anything to save criminals. Everyone present was lost in thought, and Kane was also very strange. Originally, he thought that he could find clues of the intruders by asking Dr. Connors here, but they were far more cunning than he imagined, and they were quick and ruthless. Spicy, very purposeful, and did not leave any clues. I am afraid that even the mechanical bug they left behind could not find any connection with their organization. No matter what, we must first catch those villains. Originally, their ability was much higher than that of ordinary criminals. Now with the blood of these demons, I am afraid that their strength has reached a terrifying level. If we can't catch them as soon as possible, I think the damage they caused will not be much less than the hatred that night. Peter is more worried about the ordinary people in New York than the conspiracy behind them, because they are the most innocent victims of this incident. Nick Fury's eyes flashed. This is a good opportunity. Maybe his Avengers plan can be facilitated in advance. Iron Man, Death Whisperer, Spider-Man, this combination is already the best choice among known superheroes. Moreover, Death Whisper Kane also has 2 fierce generals under him, which is even more valuable, but this team is a bit out of control, and it is perfect to find a way to mix that person into it. Maybe we can improvise a team to deal with this crisis. Nick Fury was taken aback for a moment, and Kane actually said what he wanted to say first. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, he glanced at Nick after he finished speaking. These demonized supervillains are no longer enemies that we can defeat alone, or to put it more seriously, if we are not careful, we may even fall into their hands. Kane walked to the wall on the side. He patted the big iron gate with 2 clear palm prints on it. So, in order to arrest them as soon as possible, we should gather all our forces so that we can act quickly and efficiently. Like Peter said, every second of the night, these guys have the potential to cause more damage. I agree with Kane's point of view. The strength of this group of criminals is no longer something that one or a few superheroes can securely win. What's more, they may also unite because of the fear of S.H.I.E.L.D. and superheroes. It is necessary to integrate together. complement each other's strengths, and give full play to our respective strengths. Tony stood up first, and after the battle with Obade, he knew that the enemy might be more difficult than he imagined. In the generational battle he fought in Afghanistan, the enemy was originally a superpower, and after being strengthened by the blood of the devil, who knows what it will look like now. Count me in. These guys were originally sent to prison by me, and my understanding of them can help you. As a good neighbor of New Yorkers, Peter stood up without hesitation. Drive Connors, are you interested in joining us? Kane's words shocked everyone. How could he want to recruit Dr. Lizard? It was sent in. Me. Dr. Connors was also very surprised. He just wanted to reduce his sentence at first, so why did he suddenly seem to be expected to be released from prison early? Yes, in this incident, only you can maintain the purity of your soul amidst the corruption of demon blood. I think it may have something to do with the serum left in your body, and you are the leading expert in biogenetics. We urgently need a person like this. Talents from all over the world come to study the serum against demonic corruption. Ahem. Nick Fury finally couldn't help it anymore, and pretended to cough twice to attract everyone's attention. Dr. Connors seems to be still our prisoner, and his sentence has not yet expired. Parole, medical parole, I can let my legal team come to talk to you, and you can set the price as you like. In short, I hope to see Dr. Connors in the biology laboratory this afternoon. Tony fully showed a rich man. How arrogant people are in American society, and his words suddenly woke up a guy next door. Boss, do you need a bodyguard? The kind that can block guns and nuclear bombs for you. As long as you give me money, it's not impossible to let me use my buttocks to block this black guy's harassment. In a word, as long as you give money, let me do whatever I want. A man with scars on his face suddenly jumped out from the next door, swiftly passed between the two detectives, and appeared in front of Tony in the blink of an eye, talking to him with a playful smile. Wow, all the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. took out their guns and aimed at him. This guy is also a prisoner here. Although he didn't escape from prison, he couldn't be treated carelessly. Tony didn't show any fear. With Kane and Peter beside him, even without the steel suit, he might be safer than the President of the United States. He is another prisoner who is still in prison. He has been sleeping next door just now. Mr. Stark had better stay away from him to prevent him from acting aggressively. Seeing the livid face of the boss Nick Fury, Coulson hurried out to smooth things over. Hey, this is slander, I reserve the right to sue you. The scar-faced man shook Coulson without looking back, and then continued to say to Tony, don't listen to his nonsense, boss, my name is Wade Wilson, nicknamed Deadpool, is a well-known mercenary in the industry, working with money as my mission, and I have never had a bad record of killing money owners since my debut, so you can rest assured. Mercenary. Then what did you do to get caught here? Tony asked curiously. This guy seemed to have a weird head, not like a normal prisoner at all. I'm here to escape the debt of love. You know, a handsome man like me is always followed by groups of beauties. There is really nowhere to hide. I can only come to the prison to avoid the limelight, and it has to be someone else. A prison you can't get into. The mercenary named Wade Wilson said narcissistically, but as long as the people present were not blind, no one would believe this sentence. His expression was like that of a severely burned patient. His face was nothing like handsome and unrestrained. It turns out that only the wrong name is not the wrong nickname, and the title of Xiaozhangjian is really appropriate. Kane ignored Deadpool, who was bragging about his love history, and instead came to Coulson and asked, why did you come in? Coulson glanced at Deadpool with a strange look, and said in a low voice, I still used a toy gun to rob the S.H.I.E.L.D. New York branch. Kane also began to look at the strange flower with strange eyes. Because of this, it should be sent to a mental hospital. Then punch the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Well, Kane admitted that this is much more serious than assaulting the police, but he looked at Nick Fury's face, and asked in a low voice, is that why Nick's face is so bad? At that time, the director happened to be there. He also scolded the director for one-eyed black charcoal head. It seems that he courted death by himself. Do you know why he came to jail? Didn't pay off the prostitution fee. Just lock him up for 100 years. That's what the director said. For the first time, Kane felt sympathy for Nick Fury. If it was him, he would be caught or not, and he would definitely be beaten up. However, from the surveillance video, the appearance of all the criminals injected with the blood of the devil has changed. Why can't he see any changes? Coulson also raised a question. Let me check. Kane stepped forward, looked at Deadpool with a smile and said, Mr. Wilson, can I check your body? I want to know how the blood of the devil affects you. How big? Physical examination. Wade covered his buttocks and screamed, don't think that I don't know your dirty tricks, and violate me in the name of physical examination. Don't think, there is no 100 million, I mean nothing will agree. The scene was silent. Although everyone knew that it was Wade running the train with his mouth full, they still took a small step back in unison. Everyone, can you let me have a chat with Mr. Wilson alone? Kane said a word with a normal face, but the white flames on his body and the pair of white eyes fully showed that he would have to talk to him carefully. Deadpool chatted about life and ideals. Ahem, come on, let's all go out and let Mr. Kane carefully examine Wilson. As the highest-ranking person in the interrogation room, Nick Fury naturally took the lead and walked out of the room, waiting for everyone to come out. After that, he naturally locked the door from the outside. No, don't come here again and I'll make a move. Don't. The thick iron door couldn't block Deadpool's miserable screams. Peter couldn't help shivering. If I didn't know Kane's character, I really thought he did something to Mr. Wilson. You pity that ruffian. Nick looked at Peter strangely. To be honest, he just broke his mouth a little bit, so he shouldn't be punished like this. First, he was locked up in this dark place for a long time, and then he was ravaged by Kane. Some of his spells are really terrifying. Nick rolled his eyes. It's just a bit of a broken mouth. You know, since this guy was locked in, the rest time here has been 3 times faster than before. No one can stay with this guy for a week. Drive Connors, does he really have such a broken mouth? Peter couldn't believe it. He himself was the representative of broken mouths, especially after changing his clothes. However, he didn't feel that his friends were alienating him. Of course, his heart was simple. Peter didn't realize at all why Matt would find an excuse to leave immediately after fighting with him, and Kane asked him to change back to the ordinary person's attire the first time. Ah, I was a little deaf before I turned into a lizard. Dr. Connors smiled. In fact, as soon as Wade opened his mouth, all the prisoners would spontaneously plug their ears. Bang bang. Wilson's wailing lasted for 10 minutes and finally subsided. Immediately after the door of the interrogation room was knocked, Nick opened the door and asked, how is it? Not corrupted by the devil, there is a strange exclusive factor in his body that resists the invasion of the blood of the devil. Kane said truthfully. No, I'm asking if you have taught him a good lesson. Kane rolled his eyes. Won't you teach him a lesson yourself? The self-healing factor in him can reduce the pain, and any injury is not painful or itchy to him. This is the first time I have heard him scream like this. Nick replied seriously, it seems that he still has feelings for Will. Sen understands something. Then go ask him yourself. Pushing the door open, I saw Wade Wilson slumped on the ground, waving his hands at Kane again and again. Boss, I'm convinced, don't burn me anymore, you can tell me to do anything. The others looked at each other in blank dismay. This kid is so virtuous and dares to talk cheap. Okay, you can get out of prison, and so is Dr. Connors. Without waiting for them to reply, Nick Fury turned and pointed at Kane and Tony and said, but you have to make sure that the 2 of them won't cause any trouble. Also, I will let Coulson's New York branch fully cooperate with you, and make sure that no major disturbances occur in this city. You don't need to say this, just remember that you owe us a favor. After speaking, Kane walked out with Dr. Connors and Wade. When the elevator doors closed, a sly smile appeared on Nick Fury's face. Sir, did you plan to let Kane take them away from the beginning? Coulson keenly captured that smile. Yes, the 2 of them shouldn't have any problems if they haven't escaped from prison in that situation, and even if there are problems, it doesn't matter, they are at least much stronger than the 6 escaped. The matter of super criminals is still it's safer to let superheroes solve it, and what we have to do now is to find out who the guys who robbed the prison are and what they want to do. Nick Fury looked at the messy prison, with a cold look in the only remaining one eye, and then waved his hand, leading Coulson and the others to the elevator. At the same time, he gave Coulson an order, call Natasha back. The sea breeze blowing from the Atlantic Ocean made New York City look a little cold in late autumn, and the sky fell into darkness early. There were not many pedestrians on the street, but they were because of the bad weather rather than the bad security situation. Since New York City has Spider-Man and Daredevil, the law and order situation has improved somewhat, but it is not obvious, because criminals know that even if they are hit by these two superheroes, at most they will be beaten and hurt. Bone was sent to prison, which is a situation that only happens when you meet Daredevil, and when you meet Spider-Man, sometimes you don't even get injured, which is safer than being caught by the police. Until one day, a superhero wearing a skull mask appeared here, and together with the Punisher slaughtered the gangsters in the entire building. This made these guys who took prison as a vacation restrained and squatted for a few years. Prison is nothing but one life. Now, ordinary people don't dare to openly rob at night with guns, and some small shop owners are gradually daring to delay the closing time. Lao Zhang is one of them. As a second-generation immigrant, Lao Zhang is a native-born Chinese in the United States. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tries, the Americans still look at him with distasteful eyes. Therefore, he was a college student at that time. I can only inherit the grocery store at home and spend the rest of my life here. Time has smoothed the edges and corners of Lao Zhang, and the hardships of life have also made him accept his fate, and he has lived in this shop. Recently, due to the long opening time, he has made some money, but tonight, he encountered unexpected disasters. "Hey, old man, take out all the money in the money box." Three hooded men walked into the grocery store. Lao Zhang noticed something was wrong, but before he could press the alarm button, the man drew a pistol and pointed it at him. "I'll take the money, don't hurt me." Lao Zhang quickly raised his hand, indicating that he didn't call the police. Although today's income is not guaranteed, saving his life is more important. "Hurry up, old guy, don't dawdle, are you waiting for superheroes? Haha, tell you, we are superheroes." The three laughed and took off their hoods. Toy masks of heroes and death rattlers. Hearing this and seeing their masks, Lao Zhang stopped pulling out money. He looked at the three punks. Compared to them, you are even worse than the bedbugs on the roadside. "Old guy, you're tired of working." Old Zhang's forehead was pressed against the black muzzle of the gun, but he seemed very calm. This scene happened a month ago. It was an evening. When he was about to lock up, a pistol was put on his head. Two black men pushed him into the shop. Business was not very good that day. There was no money, which also made the two guys angry. Just when the kid with the gun was about to shoot, the Death Whisperer rushed in to save him. Although the bone mask looked scary, it was a good one. Young man, from his every move, you can see his youthful blood, and a little bit of frizz and hatred. If it weren't for these superheroes, maybe I would have died a month ago. Since they helped me live an extra month, then I won't allow garbage like you to slander them. Lao Zhang suddenly reached out and grabbed the mask of the man on the opposite side was pulled down fiercely. Under the mask was a pale face, young but full of hostility. Lao Zhang sighed to himself, he was also a young man, why was there such a big gap? It's because the child has superpowers, maybe, but Lao Zhang feels that what really determines people's code of conduct is not ability, but the integrity of the heart. The young man in front of him became angry because Lao Zhang saw his true colors, coupled with the ridicule of his companions. His trembling fingers might pull the trigger at any time. Lao Zhang looked at him calmly. At this moment, he seemed to feel that he had returned to the when he was young. He was full of enthusiasm for the world and refused to bow to any evil forces. Curse of old age. A familiar voice rang in Lao Zhang's ears, exactly the same as that night. The three robbers collapsed to the ground, and the superhero wearing a terrifying mask walked in again. Death Whisperer. "Hi, hello, old man, do you mind if I help you dispose of these three pieces of trash?" Seeing that the Death Whisperer grabbed the clothes of the three of them and walked out, Lao Zhang suddenly called out to him, "Death Whisperer, they are still children, they are not worthy of death, hand them over to the police." The Dead Whisperer looked back at Lao Zhang, then looked down at the three pleading faces. "Okay, since you haven't done too much evil, and you don't have any lives in your hands, I will spare your lives today." Before the three of them were happy, the Death Whisperer continued, "But I won't call the police for you. Since you are so willing to squander your youth, then I will help you recover some." Life siphon. 3 red and white ripples were transmitted from the chests of the 3 men to the palms of the Death Whisperer. They watched this scene in horror, and the origin of the title Death Whisperer was finally recalled to them. That's 10 years of lifespan. If you're serious about finding a job and taking good care of it, maybe it's only a tenth of your lifespan. If you're smoking marijuana like you're doing now, maybe you'll be found somewhere in the corner tomorrow. Corpse, the road is under your own feet, so think about how you want to go. By the way, I also planted something on your body. If something happens to this old gentleman, I will immediately let that thing grow. As for what, think for yourself. The Dead Whisperer threw the three of them on the side of the road and was about to leave, but Lao Zhong stopped him again. He turned around and caught a can of things that old Zhong threw to him. Hey, Dead Whisperer, the weather is cold, have a can of hot coffee. Thank you. The Death Whisperer waved to Lao Zhong, and quickly disappeared around the corner of the street. How is it, Kane? Tony's voice sounded in the earphones. The three little thieves have nothing to do with the group of 6. Kane replied, taking a sip of hot coffee. Kane, to be honest, is it true what you just said about absorbing their 10 years of life? Peter's voice also sounded in the earphones, and the two of them, Morena and Korik, were scattered in New York City. Here, so that after discovering the Devil 6, they can delay for the first time and buy time to wait for the assembly. Therefore, their earphones are always turned on, and everyone can hear what anyone says. Please, it's just to scare them. The three little thieves haven't killed anyone yet, so this warning is enough. As for the spirit power that was sucked away, they just need to eat something and rest for a few days. It can be made up. Kane is not a bloodthirsty person. The three boys are still a little saved, and the threat of losing their lives is much greater than going to jail. He believes that they can make the right choice. Speaking of which, it's been 3 days. Why hasn't there been any movement from the group of 6? Kane couldn't help asking. Tony said in the headset, you all come back to the base. I think it is necessary to hold a meeting to discuss it. In a conference room on the top floor of Stark Tower, Kane and the others sat around a round table. They were a little tired after 3 consecutive days of patrolling. Superheroes are not robots. I didn't find any trace. Kane said first. Me too. There have been no changes in the city these days except for a little more thieves. Peter was the second to speak. Morena and Kulik also shook their heads. For the heroes of the shelter, the situation in New York City can be described as peace through singing and dancing. I hacked into the surveillance network of the whole city and found no trace of them. There are 2 possibilities, one is that they are hiding, and the other is that they have left New York. Tony called up the holographic map of New York City and displayed it on the table. It is convenient for everyone to communicate more intuitively. However, I also consulted the information around New York City in the past 3 days, but I still haven't found any trace of them. Therefore, I think it is more likely that they are still hiding in New York. After all, some of them are not easy to see in appearance. Hide on the go. However, with their irascible personalities after being corrupted by the blood of demons, can they hide for so long? Kane turned to look at Morena and Korik. Among all the people, only they knew the most about demons and corrupted humans. You may have a misunderstanding about the corruption of demon blood. Morena has the most say on this matter. There are many types of demons in hell, and all creatures born there can be counted as demons, including beast forms. Yes, of course there are also human forms. Generally violent people are corrupted by beast form demons, but those who are corrupted by human-shaped demons may not all have a drastic change in personality. Morena showed a look of reminiscence. The corruption of demons is silent and even ubiquitous. Even the most brave and fearless heroes will eventually corrupt into demons who spread fear. People who are corrupted by the blood or soul of human demons have changeable personalities. Cunning, suspicious, cruel. Cruelty is just one of them. Besides, there is another way to be corrupted. Korik took over the conversation. We call it corruption. It is due to inner weakness or greed that human beings actively seek the power of hell and dedicate their body and mind to demons. In exchange for a demonized body, the character of fallen people generally does not change much, because they are not good things in the first place. Then what do you think of the group of 6? Peter asked. It's all possible. Judging from the fact that they didn't immediately start destroying the city, their corruption has retained their sanity. This is actually worse news. Such people are more dangerous, because they can think, use tricks, and design traps. Everyone started to have a headache. What is more troublesome than facing 6 demonized villains? It must be facing 6 demonized villains who still retain their sanity. Everyone has read their files. Although there are brainless guys like Rhino among these 6 people, there are also scheming villains like Vampire Mobia, and even spies like Chameleon. Now everyone even hopes that they can show up and do a little damage. Better than having them plot something bigger. That's it. Tony rubbed his temples and said, I don't think it's an option to keep patrolling like this. I have already asked Wade to go to the underground world to inquire about news. Let's go back and rest first. If there is any news, I will call immediately. Everyone, and Dr. Connors can stay with me, and the laboratory here can play his best role. Well, okay. Kane also sighed helplessly. It is indeed a troublesome thing to know the enemy from the dark, which means that the defender has always been passive, and New York is such a big city. I really can't take care of this one, so I can only rely on Tony's intelligence and monitoring. Before going downstairs, Kane glanced out the floor-to-ceiling windows again. Where did these 6 people hide? Norman Osborn also raised the same question. He was the leader of this jailbreak. The purpose of injecting demon blood into super criminals was to let them disturb the site of S.H.I.E.L.D. to facilitate his plan, but who I know, these guys did not follow his script, and hid as soon as they got out of prison. Now, instead of attracting the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D., these guys let S.H.I.E.L.D. Come on, don't talk about continuing to plan now, even the production of demon potions is almost at a standstill. These idiots are so cowardly. I spent so much money to get them out, but they don't even have the guts to take revenge on S.H.I.E.L.D. In vain, I injected them with the best demon potion. An angry Norman Osborn kicked a chair away. He had little time left. If he still failed to satisfy the Lord, he might end up miserable. Robert. After venting for a while, Norman Osborn regained his composure, and immediately greeted his dog leg. Boss. Robert stepped forward from the side. Send Harry to the UK. Let him handle the affairs of the UK branch, and find him more work so that he won't come back for a while. Yes, boss. In any case, Norman Osborn still had nothing to say about his love for his son. At this critical juncture, the first thing he thought of was Harry's safety. Also, how is your recruitment of mercenaries going? It has been progressing slowly. There have been many wars in Central Asia and Arabia in the past few years, and there are not many mercenaries on the market. Hearing this, a green light flashed in Norman's eyes. War, many wars. There must be a lot of disabled soldiers. Hey, the military has never given much disability pensions, so there must be a group of disabled people soldiers are out on the streets trying to recruit them. Boss, with such a big fanfare, will it attract the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Robert asked worriedly. I can't care about that much anymore. The deadline my lord gave me is coming soon. I must complete the task as soon as possible. If the plan is successful, I won't be afraid of attracting the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, I see, I'll do it now. As Robert left, Norman Osborn looked back again, and here was a huge cave, which was filled with densely packed huge containers, which were filled with green liquid, and a human body could be vaguely seen in the liquid. Floating in the middle, there is a pipeline at the bottom of the container leading to the middle, where there is a huge tong pot. The pipeline directly extends into it, and the tong pot is a boiling black liquid, with bubbles constantly tumbling inside. Looking down from the top of the cave, these containers form a huge circle, and on the ground at the bottom of the circle, a huge black magic circle is impressively depicted. The fusion of modern and mystical things makes this place even more beautiful. Got a weird one. An underground bar in Brooklyn called the Hellfire Club. This is an underground mercenary gathering place, dedicated to those mercenaries who do not have a license to pick up jobs. Of course, the bar will also take appropriate commissions. Here is a tribute to the X-Men. There will not be any X-Men except Deadpool in this book, sorry. Late at night, a man wearing a hat came to the bar and knocked on the bar. Hey, what do you want? The bespectacled bartender asked as he wiped his glass. I want to have a blowjob. Oh, Wade, I haven't seen you for a long time. Where did you get rich recently? The four-eyed bartender looked up in surprise. Blowjob is the name of the cocktail. Only Wade here often orders it, God knows because of the taste or the name. Hey, Mole, it's great to meet you. Wade looked around, and said mysteriously, don't tell others, I'm working for S.H.I.E.L.D. It's training camp, you know, my fighting style is wild, and it doesn't match up well with the comrades in the bureau, so there's nothing I can do about it. Shield. Mole looked suspicious. No one knew which of Wade's words was true and which was not. Hey, Kelly. Wade turned around and stopped a waitress, put the blowjob made by the mole on her plate, and pointed to a big man who was more than 2 meters high and 1 meter wide in the distance and said, "Get the wine to Buck for me, and tell him it's from Booth." The mercenaries have no good temper. When Buck saw this kind of woman drinking wine, he rushed over and punched Booth down, and then the two gangs of big men fought each other. In the crackling sound of fighting, Wade said with a smile, "This is a good atmosphere for conversation." "Well, Mole, I have something to ask you." The mole listened carefully to what Wade had to say next. Generally, when Wade used this trick, the following words would be very important. This trick was to prevent someone from eavesdropping, because the fight in the mercenary bar was too easy to affect surrounded. No one can overhear the conversation between them in this situation. "Did you know something big happened a few days ago?" "You mean, jailbreak?" "Yes. Do you know where those people who ran out went?" "Someone ran away." "Aren't they being suppressed?" "Who ran out?" Mole asked suspiciously. Seeing that his expression didn't seem fake, Wade knew that this matter was a bit troublesome. The mole was an information dealer, and the Hellfire Bar was the best underground place in New York. If even he didn't know where the group of 6 was, it meant few people in New York knew about it, but no one knew where they were with such a distinctive appearance. There must be a powerful person or organization covering them up. Wade curled his lips and had no choice but to think of a solution from other aspects. "Then do you know what organization is recruiting people recently?" He felt that the organization that caused such a big commotion would definitely not be content with being peaceful, and manpower is an indispensable item in order to make big things happen. In prison, Wade was actually the first one to wake up because of the self-healing factor in his body. After his secret observation, he believed that the men in black were all well-trained soldiers and had definitely participated in actual combat, so he planned to investigate from this point. Mole is also a veteran of intelligence, and he knew what Wade meant when he heard what he said. It was normal before the accident. After the accident, there are indeed 2 companies that are recruiting veterans. "Tell me." "One is AIM. They recruit veterans and disabled soldiers. It is said that they are recruiting volunteers for the limb regeneration experiment. Participants are expected to receive free limb regeneration treatment. The other is Osborne in this city. It is said that because of the recent New York City, in order to protect the company's assets, they decided to recruit a group of veterans with combat experience to expand the security team." Wade's eyes lit up, and his limbs regenerated. This seemed to be related to the corruption of demons. Didn't Dr. Lizard grow a new arm after his transformation? "Mole, do you have the contact information for AIM?" "Why, you want to apply for the job too?" "Yes. Don't you see my face? Isn't this considered a disability?" "Well, they didn't say how disabled they need to be anyway. Now, here's their contact information." Mole handed Wade a card with a phone number on it. Wade picked up the card, turned around and walked out immediately. "Hey, Wade, don't go. Stop them. My store is almost wiped out. Whoever smashes it will pay for it. Bye. Asshole." The next day, at the AIM volunteer recruitment office, Wade faced the beautiful receptionist at the front desk and showed what he thought was the most handsome smile. "Hey beauty, although I am perfect, I still think it is necessary to improve it. What do you think?" "Physical examination first," the first one on the right. The beauty didn't even look up, just recorded his name, and then handed him a form. "Next." "Hey, don't you really think about spending the night with me? You've never experienced that kind of ecstasy feeling, I promise." Unfortunately, his words attracted stern people on both sides of the reception desk. "Big man. Oh, what a disappointment. All right, let's have a physical examination first, and you will regret it after seeing my medical examination report." Wade walked into the physical examination room surrounded by 2 big men, but it was different from what he imagined. The nurse in the physical examination room simply measured his height and weight and stamped his form as qualified. This also made Wade secretly happy. It seemed that he had found the right place. Such a trifling test, indicating that AIM does not have high requirements for test subjects and is only used for corruption. Soon, Wade boarded the AIM bus with other volunteers and drove to the suburbs. Poor Wade didn't realize that perhaps not only one family wanted to make trouble. The plans of all parties are in full swing, and Kane knows nothing about everything, and now he is starting to worry about another thing. Then, with a crisp sound, the bone sword in Kane's hand was knocked away by Morena, and pierced Pippi's head into the wall of the basement. Well, your physical strength has indeed improved a lot. Morena, who had just done this with a bone bow, said with a normal expression. Where did you see that? Kane asked depressedly. Otherwise, how many rounds do you think you can last? Priest Rothma is indeed good at melee combat, but that is also based on years of fighting or rigorous training. Have you learned melee combat skills from Master Rothma? Morena raised her eyebrows and asked. No, Kane said honestly, in such a short period of time, it is already very difficult to memorize the trajectory of various spells. He has no time to ask Mr. Razma about martial arts. So, I said that your physical strength has improved, so there is no need to doubt it. Cut, I still can't beat you in the end. Hee. Korik, who was watching the battle, smiled. If you can easily defeat us professionals who specialize in melee combat, then what's the point of our inheritance? You are a Rothma priest, and martial arts are not your only ones, fighting skills. Hey, I also understand what you said, but the limitations of undead spells are a bit big. I am actually very passive when facing the Iron Overlord. I may not be able to improve my rank in a short time, so I can only learn from other places. Think of a way. Kane sighed helplessly. Of course he also knew that studying martial arts is a bit far-fetched, but the dangers of this world will not come just because he is not ready. Loki, Ultron, Thanos, Swallowing Star. Which one is easy to get along with again? If you sail against the current, you will retreat if you don't advance. He is also forced to have no choice. Morena glanced at Kane, shook her head and said, could it be because you've gone in the wrong direction? As far as I know, Priest Rothma is a powerful professional of the legendary One-Man Legion. You are often the main force in war, but since you came to this world, I found that you are more inclined to close combat, and most of your spells are bone spears. I think there is a problem with your development direction. You are neither barbarians or not Amazons, you are a unique priest of Rothma. Why don't you work hard in your field of expertise? After listening to Morena's words, Kane also fell into deep thought. Is it true that, as she said, he has always found the wrong direction of development? Priest Rothma does have powerful melee combat abilities, but that doesn't mean he has to use melee combat as his main means of attack. The same is true for spells such as Curse and Bone Spear. With one or another defect, he can use poison spells to turn the tide of the battle against an enemy like the Iron Overlord. What should he do if he faces Ultron in the future? In the movie, Ultron was jointly created by Tony and Bruce Banner, and maybe he could find a way to stop it, but in the comics, it was created by Dr. Mim. In this real world, the ghost knows it will appearing in whose computer. Maybe one day it is not impossible to drill out of the space carrier of S.H.I.E.L.D. Thinking of the overwhelming robots rushing towards him and his comrades in arms, Kane felt shuddering. The Avengers in the movie wiped them all out with gorgeous attacks and skillful coordination, but it was hard to imagine in reality. People who have never cooperated before can suddenly work as a team. What a joke. Do you really know how to be a superhero? Maybe Hulk and Thor and even Tony can survive, but Hawkeye and Black Widow, who are mortals, can survive. That kind of saturated attack with no dead ends in all directions may not even be able to withstand a round of offensive by Scarlet Witch. In this dangerous world, the future is full of uncertainties. Although Kane has incredible abilities after his resurrection, the level of danger he faces has also increased by more than one level. Of course, he can choose to disguise himself as an ordinary person and hide in he watched the incident quietly from the sidelines, but he couldn't really escape from it all. What Loki wants to enslave is the whole world, and Ultron wants to slaughter all mankind. In their thinking, cowardice is the original sin. Only the strong can be equal to them. Their origin determines their thoughts. This no one can correct it, but, as an ordinary person, Kane believes that there is no distinction between high and low life. Human beings can defeat all creatures and stand on this planet. There must be something powerful. Our soul, our thinking, our creativity is the cornerstone of our strength, and these things cannot be measured by strength. Human beings are weak, but they have wisdom that other creatures do not have, and the society formed by all people is a platform for combining these wisdoms. Even superheroes cannot exist without society. Tony's ingenuity Superman is first class, but there are no ordinary workers to make the simplest screws, and his steel suit can only stay on the paper. Peter's mutation seems to be just an accident, but there are no scientific researchers in the laboratory, so what? Go find the mutant spider. Hulk. Well, Hulk's stretchy shorts are also the greatest work of mankind. Protection is far more difficult than destruction, but only those who learn to protect can become heroes in people's minds, and the reason why heroes are admired by the world is because they can do things that ordinary people cannot. Martin Niemöller said a classic sentence. In Germany, at first they hunted down the communists. I didn't speak, because I'm not a communist. Then they hunted down the Jews. I did not speak because I am not a Jew. Later they hunted down the union members. I didn't speak, because I wasn't a union member. After that they hunted down Catholics. I did not speak for I am a Protestant. At last they came to me. But no one stood up to speak for me. This poem was done by the pastor to call on people to stand up bravely to fight against evil, and Cain felt that it was also telling people what a hero is like. The so-called heroes are those who stood up earlier than others, and fought against evil without fear of sacrifice in order to protect family members, friends, strangers, and even all human beings. The peace of soul they seek is also tied to this, and they may be killed. Misunderstood by the world, they may never be able to show their true colors to others, but they did not complain at all, just silently cleaned up their wounds and continued to guard the group. What they are looking for is not material enjoyment or people's chasing and cheering. What they are looking for is a guardian belief, which is the greatest cause in their hearts. From how to improve his ability to divergent thinking to seeking the true meaning of protection, Cain entered an ethereal state. Everything in the outside world was forgotten by him. He just sat there quietly, staring blankly at the front. A blue-gray ripple gradually emerged from his body, which was different from his usual soul flame. It was not strong, but just faintly flowing on his body. This scene was watched by Marina and Korik during the day. They looked at each other and quietly moved away from him. Marina returned to the upper bar to entertain guests, while Korik sat quietly by the door, guarding Cain to prevent him from being disturbed by other things. That blue-gray ripple is the power of the spirit hidden in Cain's body. It was this kind of energy that Rothma showed when they met for the first time. Cain has always been able to call it with the help of spells, but like today this is the first time that such an autonomous appearance has occurred. The majestic spirit power has continuously penetrated into Cain's soul, and part of the energy has also entered the coat of arms on Cain's chest. The continuous infusion of spirit power made the outline of Cain's soul more and more clear, and it began to gradually leave Cain's body. Korik watched Cain's soul leave his body in surprise, and then disappeared with a flash of golden light on his chest disappeared. Blue sky, grassland, and stone house. When Cain opened his eyes, he found that he had returned to this place, and in front of him, the wise old man with white hair was still looking at him with a smile. Teacher Rothma, I'm not dreaming. Cain stood up in surprise, and grabbed Rothma's arm regardless of being rude. Hee, silly boy, you are not dreaming, but it is no different from dreaming. What the soul sees is not a dream. After finishing speaking, Rothma hooked his hand slightly, drawing a ray of spirit power from Cain, and lightly sprinkled it on the grass. In an instant, a gorgeous flower bloomed on the strange grass, giving the world has added a colorful and gorgeous scenery. Teacher, what is this? Cain never knew that Priest Rothma had the ability to create life. The resurrection of a puppet is not a living being. His summoning of a heroic spirit is a bit like resurrection, but the creation is not real. Living people are still between life and death. This is not my spell, I just released the power of the spirit itself. Rothma pointed to the flowers on the ground and said with a smile, everything in the world is composed of basic elements, but why do some of them turn into sand and stone? Some turned into flowers and trees, some into animals, and some into humans. Humans, aren't they born of angels and demons? Cain once knew the background story of the dark world, and he still has some impressions of some important events. Hee, you also know this. Yes, the first generation of Nephilim was indeed born of angels and demons, but there were already traces of humans in the world of Sanctuary before that. During the real war between gods and demons, Nephilim, because of the blood in his body, Nephilim does often play the role of leader, but in fact, the human army is the main force on the battlefield. Without their heroic sacrifices, the strength of Nephilim alone cannot defeat angels and demons. Rothma explained patiently. He sat down among the flowers, gently picked one off, and handed it to Cain. After a long period of observation, I found that the difference between living things and non-living things is the spirit, which is life force. Species are full of sources of vitality, and the spirit power contained in various species is not the same, and the one with the most is human beings, and when a large amount of spirit power is condensed, a new thing is formed, that is the soul. Cain frowned, and asked suspiciously, "Teacher, what exactly is a soul? Do animals and plants have it?" Souls can theoretically be born in creatures with the power of spirits, but the power of spirits in plants and animals is too little to breed a strong enough soul. In my opinion, the soul is the energy that prompts human beings to think. The difference between intelligent creatures and other creatures. Teacher, scientific research in our world has found that thinking is caused by a neuron discharge in the human brain. Yes, then animals also have what you call neurons in their brains, why can't they think? Cain was at a loss for words. He is not a biologist and cannot answer this question, but as far as he knows, neither his original world nor the Marvel world seems to have explained this clearly. However, Ancient One the Master would probably agree with Teacher Rothma's opinion, because the lineage of the Supreme Mage also has a lot of research on the soul. But thinking of Master Ancient One, Cain finally remembered an imminent question. He looked at Teacher Rothma and asked, "Teacher, although I don't know how I got here, it's great to see you. Yes, I am eager to know how to improve my strength and make greater contributions to protecting that world." "Hee, silly boy, do you think I've been telling you useless things?" Rothma smiled, and he found this youngest disciple more and more interesting. He had the same spirit of sacrifice as other disciples, and the kind of vigor they don't have is rare among the priests of Rothma. They all want to learn his wisdom, but Rothma doesn't want the teachings to confine their respective personalities. "Sorry, teacher, I may not be very smart, so I didn't understand what you meant." Cain scratched his head with an apologetic expression. "It doesn't matter, you were able to release your soul to come here, one is because of the help of the badge on your chest, and the other is that your soul finally understands the true meaning of protection, which is also the core idea of our Rothma sect, so I can guide you. The purpose of your soul coming back here is to teach you something that it failed to teach you before." Upon hearing this, Cain quickly sat upright. He has always been a good student in the eyes of the teacher. "Hee, don't be so restrained." Rothma smiled and started to get down to business. "When you came last time, there was not much spirit power left in my body, so I couldn't let you understand the real wonder of spirit power, but this time you came here with so much spirit power, I can also borrow some to help you lay the groundwork." Rothma pointed to the little flower in Cain's hand and said, "I didn't create this flower out of thin air, but I integrated the power of the spirit into this grassland. This world is like an illusion. It looks green and shady, but there is no spirit power. These grasses are like dead things, but when I pour the power of the spirit into them, even such dead things can bloom beautiful flowers." The mages of Shansai and Kadian release their spells with the help of the powerful and invisible arcane power in nature, and what our priests of Rothma use is the power of the spirit contained in life. There is no distinction between superiors and inferiors, and anyone who has practiced to the extreme can kill gods and demons. The world calls us necromancers, and thinks that we are playing with the corpses of the dead and fears us. This is a great misunderstanding. We are wanderers between life and death. We use the life energy we have to balance the light and darkness of the world. This is the real way to protect humanity, because when the balance is disturbed, humanity will face extremely dangerous situations. Cain is very clear about this. In the world of sanctuary, angels represent light, and demons represent darkness, but in fact, neither of these two planes has goodwill towards humans. Angels are proud and treat humans as slaves, while demons are cruel. Treat human beings as food, so if you really want peace and tranquility, you need to balance the power between them. If only one is left, the human world will be swallowed. By the way, Teacher Rothma, I also found traces of demons in the current world, but Morena thinks that they are not known demons in the world of sanctuary. Razma didn't look too surprised after listening to Cain's report of their discovery. By tracking the Dark Soul Stone, I have discovered that this world is full of various planes, and they run side by side without interfering with each other. However, there will always be some powerful beings who will covet other planes after unifying the entire plane. When these lives believe in the way of order, we will call them angels or gods, and when these lives believe in the way of chaos, we will call them demons or devils. So, in fact, demons and angels are not the only ones that exist, and all of them may have a bad influence on the world. Cain finally confirmed his doubts. Yes, those are just titles. I have been to some planes in the process of tracking the Dark Soul Stone. There are both order and chaos. The plane of order confuses and exploits the low-level planes for resources, and even takes action to hinder the low-level planes. The development of the plane, as for the lives of those chaotic planes, in terms of behavior style, they are even more cruel than the 7 demon gods of hell. Is there no plane that would be willing to help the weak? Cain thought of Thor and Odin in Asgard. Child, there may be such a great and kind individual, but from the perspective of the entire plane, it is almost impossible, at least I have never seen it. Rothma even gave him an example. Some human beings will let go of one or a few sheep out of pity, but will the entire human race give up slaughtering sheep? It is a good thing that can provide human beings with fur and meat. In the same way, human life is in we don't know what is in the eyes of other beings, so only when we grow stronger and use our strength to tell other lives that we are equal, this is the only way to protect ourselves. Having said that, Rothma stopped talking. He could see that Cain needed a period of thinking to digest and absorb all this. He knew from Cain that there were no gods and demons in his own world, at least there is no evidence to prove these two races, but now the world Cain lives in has demons, so it is not impossible for angels or gods to appear. In this case, it is necessary for him to let Cain recognize the true meaning of gods and demons is to be able to face them calmly, instead of fighting them with fear or awe. In that case, Cain's combat power, which was originally not dominant, will be further reduced. After a long time, Cain's eyes regained clarity. Rasma saw firmness and fearlessness in his eyes. He smiled and waited for Cain to speak. Teacher, I want to learn how to use the power of the spirit better. Cain said, looking at Rasma. Of course, this time we have enough time for me to guide you to understand the true meaning of power. The more Rasma looked at Cain, the happier he was, and he did not hesitate to share his insights on the way of balance without reservation. The explanation was given to Cain. There is no concept of time in this eerie space, and Cain only vaguely remembers the flowers on the grass changing from blooming to withering. Finally, Rothma uttered the closing words, "Okay, my child, I will leave everything behind. Knowledge has told you, but you have to remember that there is no end to the exploration of knowledge. What we know is just a drop in the ocean, and so is power. Don't be blinded by the fog, follow the guidance of your heart, and keep exploring forward. Maybe, someday you can teach me something new." Cain bowed deeply to Rasma. "Thank you, my teacher, I will always be grateful for your teachings. I still have a long way to go to catch up with you on this road. I hope you cannot dislike my stupidity. Okay, don't imitate my old-fashioned look. Your senior brothers are too much like me. They made the Rothma sect lifeless and always let the world misunderstand us." Rothma patted Cain. The top of his head laughed, which made Cain smile too. "By the way, teacher, I feel that the power of the spirit has reached a bottleneck, but I still can't be promoted. Can you help me find out what's wrong?" Cain asked. He really had too many questions to ask after all. He is the only Rothma priest in the Marvel world, and it is very laborious to practice alone. Hee. Don't worry, the promotion of the way of balance is more about the understanding of life. You can only be promoted after you have a deeper understanding of the true meaning of life, and you are now a high-level priest, or, it's a necromancer, otherwise, do you think I can guide you to this world so easily?" Rothma said with a smile. One of the characteristics of a necromancer is the ability to absorb the power of the soul to strengthen the soul, otherwise you will be pulled. Sema really didn't dare to bring Cain's soul here casually. It is a very dangerous thing for the soul to travel through the plane. If Rasma hadn't used his own spells to send Cain away, his soul would it has long been dissipated in the plane crossing. Oh, that's it, Cain suddenly realized, and finally figured out the ins and outs. Okay, I have nothing to teach you, but now you have two choices, either return to your own world, or return to the world of Marvel. Then, where do you plan to return to? Woolen cloth. Back to your own world. Cain's heart moved. This was originally the goal he had been working hard for all the time. However, after experiencing so much in the Marvel world, he hesitated again. One is the world he has lived in for 20 years, with family and friends, and his familiar life. On the other side is a bizarre world, where there are superheroes as well as supervillains, and they are always facing various dangers, but he can't tell how to return to his own world words come. Compared with their original world, people in the Marvel world seem to live in a more difficult life. Gangsters, supervillains, aliens, and invasions from different planes may be able to be a superhero in their own world, but Cayenne always feels that the Marvel world needs me more. After all, there are too many forces capable of destroying the Earth. Moreover, there are many interesting friends who fight side by side with me and face unimaginably powerful enemies. Since I have chosen to be a superhero, should you choose to protect more people? Teacher, I choose to return to the Marvel world. After thinking for a while, Cain gave his answer. Okay. Rothma didn't say anything, and with a swipe of his finger in the air, a crack appeared out of thin air. Wait, teacher, these spirit powers are given to you so that you can plant some flowers and plants when you are bored. Maybe I can see a teacher's wife next time. Cain walked into the crack. Before that, he suddenly turned his head and shot a large ball of spirit power at Razma, then blinked at him with a smirk, turned around and got inside. Hee, this kid. Rothma felt the power of a lot of spirits in his body, and smiled helplessly. This kid Cain has really realized something, and it is not selfish to help him. Obtaining the power of the soul from the outside world is one of them. It seems that this child understands this. However, he is not the kind of person who only seeks profit. Being able to save other worlds is also a state for him who is practicing the way of balance, sublimation. Seeing that the space crack was about to close, Rothma grabbed something from his sleeve, wrapped it with a ball of spirit power and threw it into the crack. Watching the space in the crack calm down, he said with a smile, "Boy, I have no use for this thing, so I will give it to you." Cain opened his eyes, and the first thing that caught his eyes was Pippi's big, bald head and two black eye sockets. "You're awake." Carrick's voice sounded behind him. "Sorry to bother you. How long have I been away?" Cain asked with a smile. "It's not that long, it's only 3 days." Carrick smiled. His slightly tired expression let Cain understand that Carrick probably never took a second of rest in these 3 days. However, the effect seems to be pretty good. Although Carrick didn't know where he went, the surge of power in his body showed that Cain must have had some adventures. "Nothing can be hidden from you." A wave of spiritual power entered Carrick's body with Cain's hand, and his spirit improved a lot. The relationship between them does not need any words of gratitude. Me. Coulson came to look for you last night, but you left after you were meditating. He should have gone to find Stark. He left a message for you later, asking you to go to Stark Tower as soon as possible after waking up. Oh, looks like we're making progress, let's go. Before he finished speaking, a white ball suddenly flew out of the void behind Cain, hitting the back of his head hard. Whoops. Cain was staggered by the blow. Carrick hastily stretched out his paws to block in front of him. He was also shocked. The hidden weapon appeared out of thin air, and even he couldn't react. "Okay, Kulik, it's my teacher who is educating me." Cain picked up the white thing from the ground and said with a wry smile. Kulik looked closely, and it was a shrunken skull, but it was covered with densely textured. "It's still you Rothma priest Sven. When I taught the juniors, I always threw the hammer directly." Cain said that the lack of population among you barbarians is related to the way of education. In the conference room on the top floor of the Stark building, everyone gathered around the round table, waiting for Coulson to share information about S.H.I.E.L.D. The information we have obtained indicates that the group of 6 is very likely to be hidden by this person. Coulson displayed a photo on the wall. Like a businessman. This man's name is Jin Bin, whose real name is Wilson Fisk. He is the largest underworld leader in New York and even the United States. 40% of criminal activities in the United States are related to him. Coulson briefly introduced this man. Our inspection according to all the voyage records on the night of the incident, an international cargo ship passed by the waters near the prison when the incident occurred that night, and the boss behind it was Jin Bin. A mafia leader dares to break into your S.H.I.E.L.D. prison and rob him. He also used so many high-tech equipment. Tony said he couldn't believe it. When did the mafia become so powerful? What's so strange about this? That guy has more wealth than the average big boss, and he likes to recruit super criminals. Besides, he may not be the one who robbed the prison. Peter has been fighting crime in New York City, and he is not interested in Jin. Still quite understandable. Then the timing of his boat's appearance is too coincidental. The 6 people on the front foot escaped from prison, and he was able to catch them on the back foot in time. I don't believe there is such a coincidence in this world. Tony shook his head in disbelief. No matter what the reason is, since we found the traces of the enemy, it's better for us to get rid of those prisoners first. Coulson, can we determine their location? Kane asked. He didn't want to know what's wrong with it, however. He believes that as long as the group of 6 is resolved, any conspiracy will be destroyed. The freighter was docked at pier. We collected the surrounding surveillance video. Since the freighter arrived, we have not found any transport vehicles leaving. Therefore, if you guess correctly, they should be in the dock. Okay, thank you. Kane thanked Coulson and looked at Tony and Peter. I think we need to go to that pier to check. Well, it's okay. It's much more enjoyable to catch them all than to hunt them around. I don't want to go around the sewer just to catch them, Tony said. Peter nodded, agreeing very much with Tony, who hadn't had much luck in the sewers. By the way, are we missing one person? Where's Wade? Kane looked at Peter, and suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a guy missing a bad mouth in the team. 3 days ago, he told me that he found a very important clue, and then lost contact with him. It is not clear where he went. Tony shrugged, with a powerful self-healing factor around him, but no one worried about Wade. Moral safety. At this moment, that unlucky guy Wade is being tied to a steel bed, watching a set of needles sticking down his body. Hey, let me say, can't you experimenters invent some tablets? Why, every time I use the injection method, it hurts. You know, I like injections, but it's for beauties, not for beauties. Hell, I will have to ask for more money later. The 200 Jin beauty next to him couldn't take it anymore. She tore a piece of tape to seal his mouth, and then turned to leave. She didn't notice that with the injection of the medicine, the various data of the test product seemed to be it's too normal, it's almost the same as before the injection, and this is the most abnormal phenomenon. At this moment, when everyone's eyes were focused on Jinbin's warehouse by accident, Norman Osborn's plan had also reached the final step in the underground cave of Osborn Manor. The veterans recruited in the past few days were tricked into injecting the blood of the devil and locked in a cage. Now, the periphery of the entire cave is full of various howls like a cave, and in the cave at the core, Norman Oz himself was wearing a robe, leading a group of men in black to an altar in the center of the cave. It used to be where the crucible was, but now the crucible and pipelines have all disappeared, only those huge containers are still there, and the liquid inside has returned to calm. When they came to the altar, other people stood in a circle around the altar, and Norman Osborn stepped forward and placed the oil painting of the devil on the altar. Then, he took 2 steps back and began to recite the mantra. The incantation became faster and faster, and green liquid began to spew out from the oil painting. It was as viscous as oil. The liquid gathered at the feet of Norman Osborn along several curved stone ravines, lifting his body from the feet start to wrap up. Big drops of sweat fell from Norman Osborn's head, but he endured the pain and continued to chant the spell. Finally, the green liquid covered him completely. Even so, his mouth still had no stop. The liquid did not stop after covering him, and continued to flow in all directions along the lines carved on the ground behind him. Soon, the liquid filled the lines. Looking from the top of the cave, the entire magic circle was filled with the green liquid filled, and the liquid in those huge containers began to boil again. Crash, clatter, the containers were broken one by one, and a humanoid monster came out of each container. Their dark green bodies were covered with scales, and their joints had protruding bony spurs. The teeth looked extremely ferocious. After coming out of the container, these monsters immediately walked towards the altar and knelt down on the outer circle of the altar. At this moment, all the green liquid on Norman Oz himself has disappeared, and he has also turned into a green monster, which looks similar to the guy kneeling below. Norman. A hoarse voice came from the oil painting on the altar. Yes, my master. Norman Osborn knelt down in front of the oil painting before he had time to see the changes in himself. Okay, I've given you enough support, go carry out the mission. If you fail, just die there. Yes, my master. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.